the items that we have on the agenda. So we'll begin by having an invocation by Councilmember Ellingson and a pledge by Councilmember Smith.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this beautiful day and for the freedom that we have to meet here together today. We ask Thee to guide our discussion and to help us to discuss items with civility and wisdom and come to good conclusions. And we ask Thee to watch over our city and its residents, and please send the rain that we need, and please watch over firefighters who are battling fires within our state. And we say these things in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
If the audience will please arise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay, we'd like to excuse Council Member Mindy Wright. She's out of town. Okay, I need a motion for approval of tonight's meeting agenda.
I'll make.
Go ahead. I motion that we approve the agenda as written, with the exception of item number 4 on the consent agenda be moved to the top of the regular agenda.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Okay, we welcome you here. Don't see any youth that are here, or young kids under 20. So we appreciate, again, your attendance with us tonight. Well, first of all, go to public comment, and I have a number of, we're going to have a public section here where anyone can stand up, even though you haven't filled out one of these. And so I'll make sure that the people that have filled these out have a chance to speak. But if you have not filled one out, because it's a public forum, you are welcome to come up and speak. We just would ask that you'd spend 2 to 3 minutes, be civil in your comments, and we have a number of items that, to go through. We need the public to give their input on it, so it's very important for us to have it here. But again, if you have, there'll be an opportunity for you to be able to speak and give you that opportunity. So, okay, but I do have one that is not a part of one of the agenda items. Sarah Baker, if you would like to come up and address the council, spend 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you. It's totally unrelated to tonight, so I appreciate the time to talk about it. Mike actually invited me to do so. So, good evening. My name is Sarah Baker. I own Baker's Acres Canine Academy here in Springville. I understand that the city has been discussing back and forth. I've been actually talking with Mike and with John about proposed dog sitting license, and there's some issues with it, obviously. If there are so I'm going to continue here. These are my notes here. If there are properties creating excessive noise, odors, and other neighborhood problems, those concerns absolutely should be addressed. But I keep coming back to one question: is the problem really a number of dogs, or is it how they're managed? Those aren't the same thing. Someone can absolutely have 4 dogs that are barking all day long and creating problems for their neighbors. Another person can have 10 dogs that are professionally supervised, kept clean, and never generate a complaint. The number alone doesn't tell you which neighbor is the better. For the past 12 years, I've worked hard to build my business the right way. Before a dog is ever accepted into daycare or boarding or training, we spend time getting to know them. We evaluate their temperament, how they interact with other dogs, their vaccination history, and whether they're actually a good fit for our in-home environment. We turn dogs away if they aren't a good fit. I would rather say no and refer them out to a commercial kennel than create an unsafe or stressful environment for my dogs, for my neighbors, or my business. That's what a responsible operator does. I also want to point out that the city has already approved my in-home occupation permit, allowing up to 10 dogs during the day. The proposal I'm asking for isn't about an increase in that number. It's simply allowing qualified dogs to stay overnight instead of requiring owners to pick them up every evening. In many ways, overnight care actually reduces the traffic and impact on the neighborhood because there are fewer drop-offs and pickups. Many of my clients specifically choose a home environment because their dogs don't do well in large commercial kennels. Some are older and need one-on-one care. Some have anxiety, and others simply just do better in a quieter setting with more individual attention. Home-based boarding does not replace commercial kennels. It offers families another option. My concern is that reducing the limit to 4 dogs doesn't distinguish between responsible businesses and irresponsible ones. It treats them the same. Instead of focusing on an arbitrary number, I encourage the council to focus on measurable standards like noise, complaints, sanitation, inspections, insurance, property maintenance, and compliance with current city ordinances. Those are the things that truly protect neighbors. I believe that we all want the same outcome: peaceful neighborhoods, responsible businesses, and safe care for our animals. I simply ask that the ordinance be based on how responsibly a business operates, rather than a number that doesn't necessarily reflect neighborhood impact. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, very good. We'll go to the consent agenda items, and I'll entertain a motion for those items.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception that Councilmember Millsap pointed out earlier.
Okay.
Second.
That's item 1, 2, and 3.
Correct.
It's a roll call, Mayor.
For the
Oh,
ordinance.
indeed it is. Okay. Karen,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Jake,
Yes.
Logan.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, Logan, you want to do the,
Takes us to our public hearing first, right?
well,
Is that part of the regular agenda?
I'm just going to let you go ahead and do that motion with that
Okay.
power
With this
surcharge if you want to.
Okay. Yeah, that's all right with me. Okay. Now, this is different than the one that was sent out to the public in our packets, so do I need to make a motion in any particular way to account for that?
Yeah,
Do I
if
just
you
have
just
to-
state that in your motion, that'd be fine.
Okay. All right, then I motion that we approve resolution number 2026-24 as that's the updated draft that Director Miller shared with us in the previous work session meeting. And we will strike the word all in section 1 to be sufficient. So it will read, no fuel factor surcharge will be added to any power bill until sufficient data impacting outside power purchase cost has been received by the power department, and City Council directs the surcharge to be included on a monthly bill to begin the 6-month implementation period.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second.
It's a roll call vote. Jake,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Logan,
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Okay, very good. The reason we did that is that there was a one-word change from what was sent out to the public. It wasn't material, but it was material enough to need to pull it off of a consent agenda and do a separate motion. So if you want to know what that was, so. Okay, we'll go to item number 5, which is a public hearing for consideration of a notice of expansion of vested critical infrastructure material used filled by Dan Sumption Western Paving, Inc. in accordance with Utah Commercial UCA, and we'll have Carla make the presentation. Is that correct, or John?
Yes, Carla's going to make the presentation. I'm going to give some overview if that's okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. This right now, what I'm going to do is go over the process for the public hearing tonight, and then Carla will deal more with the substance. So what has happened and why we are here tonight is in 2025, the Utah legislature passed a law to preempt cities' authority regarding critical infrastructure materials operations. And so that has changed how Springville City or any other city can govern and put in place different requirements to make sure that these type of operational uses follow what the city might want. Instead, the state has stepped in and said there's a few things that the city can no longer do. Just quickly, what a critical infrastructure operation is. It means the extraction, excavation, processing, or reprocessing of critical infrastructure materials, which are sand, gravel, or rock aggregate. So anytime that you excavate those, you process them or reprocess them, that ends up being one of these critical infrastructure materials operations. In this case, one of the things that the use does is it stores materials, but it also crushes or reprocesses concrete and other types of materials, which would fall underneath this definition. What does the 2025 law do? First off, it vests the critical infrastructure materials use, and then it allows it to expand onto property that an owner owns that is operating this use currently, to expand onto property that's contiguous with the property it's currently on and that the owner owned before May 7th, 2025. So in this case, what we have is we have SR 51 that is at the south end of Springville. Currently right now, the use is on this property that I'm pointing out here on the map. And then the light purple is where they want to expand the use. So you can see that they're doing operations here. Right now, this over here is being used as a construction yard. And so they could take this use and put it out in this location. And again, I apologize that this was put together kind of quickly, but I wanted to give you a quick summary of how this works. If the operator owns property prior to May 7th, 2025, they have the ability to notify the city that they want to expand onto that new property. And one thing that the new state law states, and it specifically states, is that the owner is presumed to have the right to expand. And so right now you could only expand onto property that would be zoned to allow the use if it was just up to the city. But the state's taken that right away and said that they're presumed to have the right. So they notify the city. The first meeting within 30 days that's available, the council holds either a public meeting or a hearing. Tonight's item has been put on the calendar as a public hearing. This allows everybody to have some time to speak and to provide information. And then the council will listen to what is proposed tonight, and if the council determines the expansion will endanger public health, safety, or welfare, and it has to be by a preponderance of evidence on the record, then what will happen is the council will then be given 90 days to come up with some mitigation measures. Those mitigation measures can be no stricter than state permits. And then if the operator agrees to those measures, the operator can expand. Now, if the council does not find by preponderance of evidence that the use will endanger public health, safety, or welfare, the council does nothing, and then the operation can expand onto the property. Just a couple of highlights. I'm going to go through what we just went through quickly, a little more specifically. This is exactly what the state code says if it's got quotations around it. Again, these type of uses are presumed to have the right to expand. There's the process is they provide a public notice, then there's a public meeting or hearing, and it's the next available meeting that is not later than 30 days. That's one of the reasons why we're here, is because they provided the notice, and this is the next meeting that's available within those 30 days. And then tonight's meeting is to serve as sufficient notice to the public that the operator is looking to expand. After holding the public meeting tonight, the operator may expand if the council takes no action. Now, if the council does find by preponderance of evidence on the record that the expansion, and I apologize for the typo there, to the new land will endanger the public health, safety, and welfare, then what happens is the operator provides the city with their operating plan, and the city has 90 days to come up with mitigating factors. Now, just a couple of things that are in state code, just to define them. Preponderance of evidence means to prove that it is more likely than not true, or more likely true than not true. And again, what you're doing is basically weighing the evidence. Where does it fall? And if it falls slightly on it does endanger, if there's more weight on that, then that goes. If it falls slightly on that it doesn't endanger, then that's what the preponderance would be. So you can kind of see there, and then make sure that if you do find by a preponderance of evidence that you state on the record what that evidence is. And then here, it has to be a preponderance of evidence that it will endanger the public health, safety, and welfare. Health and safety are they're used often. Welfare might not be. Some of the other words that help define welfare are order, comfort, convenience, quality of life, general prosperity. And then I do apologize for all these wordy slides, but this is the last one. If you do find by preponderance of evidence that it does endanger the public health, safety, and or welfare, then what happens is the operator provides a plan. Then within 90 days, the council comes up with some mitigating measures. Those mitigating measures cannot be, as you can see this bullet point here, they have to be reasonable and not exceed requirements imposed by permits issued by state agencies, such as an air quality permit. The council may not prohibit the expansion of the use if after the 90 days the user decides to follow the mitigating measures. So,
John, is there any language in there that requires the user, if we determine that there's a preponderance of evidence, that the user, a time period that the user has to provide their plan?
There is not.
So they can do it whenever,
It just
but
says-
once it's submitted, then the council has 90 days to go over it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's nothing in there that states they have 30 days or whatever. There's just no time limit for them to provide their plan.
Okay.
So good question. Thank you. Anything else?
Can I just clarify, preponderance of evidence, is that relatively subjective if the council decides like, okay, we all feel like it weighs that direction?
That's why you've got to state on the record what evidence are you holding to.
Okay.
Now, if you don't find a preponderance of evidence, you don't even have to do an action under this new state law. You just don't take action and then they can expand. So, but if you do find a preponderance of evidence, state what that evidence is, because it has to be on the record. Any more questions for me right now? If not, I'll turn the time over to Carla.
All right. Okay, I get the fun part. Okay, so I learned way more about concrete than I ever wanted to know. First of all, if you remember correctly, they have this right because they were doing the materials processing under an overlay in a very small area of their of the property that they control. They now, as of the date in the state code, there were 21.6 acres that they would be able to expand to. That includes the ones that they are currently on. So they're all the parcels that are contiguous on the map that John showed, if I can find it. John, didn't you have a map? There we go, thank you. Which includes these pieces here and this one as well. Total 21 acres, 21.6 acres. So looking at this, it is a little difficult to make calculations on what will be produced, knowing that the law would allow them, whether or not they plan to or not, the law would allow them to expand to the entire amount of their acreage. Now, whether or not they plan to do that, that will be part of their presentation. But we're going from measuring a small area here to looking at the potential for a much larger area of production. So under the Department of Environmental Quality, Air Quality Division, they administer two types of permits. One is called a Title V, which is under the Clean Air Act. That is a federal requirement, and it governs large mining operations. Rio Tinto, Kennecott. It also refineries and power plants. So a much larger scope. The permit that they would fall under is called an NSR, which for some reason is called a new source review. Don't really know where they got that name. Anyway, that is for smaller operations. However, even with those be considered smaller operations, for the Department of Air Quality to issue a permit, they have to be expected to emit more than 5,000 tons of dust annually. That means of silica dust, harmful respirable silica. And the industry standards estimate that it takes approximately 100,000 tons of processed material to generate 5,000 tons of dust. That's a lot of stuff. So they will, if it is below that, they will not even issue a permit. So we cannot require anything under those typical standards. Now, if they will come out and measure if we feel, and if it's a very intense, if they are doing nothing but material that contains large amounts of respirable crystalline silica, then they may, but that is very rare. Typically, concrete and construction materials contain about 30% of, respirable crystalline silica. That is an average. There may be much higher amounts that may be found in certain materials that are used, such as marble or granite, that contain those higher amounts. Or there may be much less if it's all what they call Portland cement, which is kind of the grout and the binding material. It only has about 1% respirable silica. So it kind of runs the whole range. However, the average is 30%. So looking at the complaints that we've had, I spoke with Lieutenant Jeremy Leonard from Springville Public Safety, and we went through the code enforcement complaints that were related to Western paving. We were able to find two. One was since the overlay was put into place in 2021. The first complaint was received in 2023, and it involved a storage pile that was located too close to a line as established in Springville City Code in the materials processing. Western Paving relocated the pile, and the case was closed. The second complaint was received just last month, not even a month ago, July 23rd, and involved dust blowing from the site, and that complaint is still under investigation, and so as a result has not been adjudicated. Some of the other things that we need to be aware of are noise, which is, there is not a department in the state that really regulates that, unless it is something that is at a special event. They will put out warnings that the decibel level may be too high. But for the noise of concrete crushing, and it would be difficult to measure without very specific equipment, which is in the thousands of millions of dollars to measure on a regular basis and to have a regular setup where noise levels are measured on a daily basis.
You can't just use a regular decibel meter to measure that? Or?
You can, but it would have to be on throughout the entire period, and there is a way of measuring it that I didn't totally understand, because it measures not only the decibels but vibration levels as well with the processing. But I can get more information on that if you would like. So that is what we have right now. Now, OSHA does regulate exposure for employees. That says that their permissible exposure limit for respirable crystalline silica is 50 micrograms per cubic meter of air averaged over an 8-hour workday. The crushing that is done at Western Paving is not done on a daily basis. It is not even done throughout the year. They typically only crush 1 or 2 times a year. And it is done from what they have told me, and they can clarify this, and what I have been able to determine, it is actually done by Geneva Rock on their portable machines, and Geneva Rock has the permits for those portable machines through the Department of Air Quality. So that is how they manage their crushing operations. And as you at the bottom of your report, this is according to Western Paving. They typically do crushing campaigns lasting approximately 30 days on an average of 2 times per year. In 2024, they crushed 36,300 tons. In 2025, 35,498 tons. And in 2026, they have crushed 33,628 tons. And I believe they are not planning on crushing again this year, but they can clarify that.
So the tonnage that they've crushed, that's
105,426 tons since 2024.
Okay, and when you talked about the tonnage of the material before, you mentioned 100,000 tons equals so much tons of
the standard measurement is that 100,000 tons of processed materials would be required to generate 5,000 tons of respirable silica dust.
Okay.
Annually or in aggregate?
To emit more than 5,000 tons of dust annually. Industry standards estimate that approximately 100,000 tons of processed material would be required to generate 5,000 tons of dust. So the 5,000 tons is measured annually, and so whatever it would take over that period of time.
And is that 5,000 tons an acceptable level? Is that what they're saying? Or?
No, that is when an air quality permit will be issued. That's the threshold for issuing a permit.
Okay, so if they emit less dust than that,
Let me clarify. The Utah Division of Air Quality generally requires an air quality permit for operations that are expected to emit more than 5,000 tons of dust.
Okay.
So I apologize. I misspoke.
And these guys are crushing 36,000 tons. What's the total over the
105,426 since 2024.
Yeah, that's an aggregate.
Yeah, that's the total amount that they have crushed over the period of time from 2024 until
it's
now.
just over, a little over this 100,000 tons of material per year.
No, that is in total. That 105 is the total amount of material they have crushed from 2024 through to 26. That is a aggregate number for all of the years.
Okay.
They would have to be doing that on a yearly basis to produce the 5,000 tons of dust.
So they're under 40,000 every year.
Yes,
Yeah.
so far, yes.
Not with an expansion.
Yes, but that is in the area that they are crushing now, which occupies this area here.
Right. And if they, well, maybe I'm sure they're going to present, but
Yes, they are.
I'd be interested to know how much that is going to increase when they do that expansion.
Yes, and they can address those questions for you.
Okay.
Other questions for Carla?
So critical infrastructure includes a few different things. Can they add different things to that? Like, could they do a concrete batching plant?
As long as they are under the definition of critical infrastructure, they may do it.
I'm sorry, can you take us
Do you want me
back
to go
to
back
the
to that
definition
slide?
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember. It has sand, gravel, and what was the other one?
Aggregate.
Is
Aggregate.
that
Okay.
farther?
So you couldn't do a concrete batching plant here. That's not part of that critical infrastructure.
No, so it is under this definition in the state code, they would be able to expand to do any of these and still be within their right or vested right.
Cool.
And it's also our position, too, that they still have to follow our code with respect to what they're vested in. And we wouldn't allow for the concrete batch plant to be on this according to our definitions in our code. So they could crush, but they couldn't do a concrete plant. Now,
Yes, and our regulations are under Title VII, rather than under, which is our business licensing, rather than our land use code. So they would be, so it's a different method of,
business, basically.
yes.
Okay. I just wanted to
So
make sure
this-
they were separate.
Oh, sorry, Logan.
Go ahead.
So this particular statute that the state put in only covers crushing? I mean,
No,
it seems to me like a
it
Or,
covers
gravel pits.
everything, but what it does is it vests what the use is. And so it's our
okay.
position to say the use is what our code allows, so you can't vest more than what our code already says.
Okay.
But then they can expand that into any property they want because state code has now preempted us and say, yeah, you can, as long
because
as
they're vested there, but they're not vested in a batch plant, for example.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
All right.
Okay,
Good.
very good. Other questions for Carla?
Probably.
Well, we may, I think as we go through this, John and Carly just need to feel free to interject to kind of, because there's some very set guidelines and guardrails in relationship to this law that we just have to be aware of. We can't be arbitrary and capricious through this whole thing, so that's
I too
where
think
we go, so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna open this up for public comment. Do I need a motion for
Do
that?
we want
We
the
need to do the
applicant to present?
What?
Do we want the applicant to present, or the, I don't know what you call them, the user?
I think that would be really good. So, yes. Mr. Western Paving, would you like to say a few words? Maybe kind of address some of these thoughts and we'll let you go longer than 4 minutes, so, if you want to.
We brought somebody much smarter than me to speak more about it, but
Does he want to come up and help you with this or make the presentation? So that would be whatever's convenient to represent the company. I think that's what we're trying to do, is to be able to understand.
let me answer a couple questions. So
Sure.
my name's Dan Sumption. My wife and I, Tara, we own the property and run the businesses out of 2120 South State. So Western Paving was established in Springville in 1964. And in 2007, my brother and I bought the property to run both of our businesses. He's since moved up to Mapleton to run his business. But yeah, we're a concrete business, concrete flat work, kind of road construction type business. The crushing ultimately is a byproduct of what we do. So we spend a lot of time redoing ADA ped ramps and ripping out and repouring sidewalk and curb and gutter, and ultimately it became really hard to find places to store this material. And so that's what we've used this property, my brother with the asphalt and me with the concrete, and we would build it up to a point where since 2007 to where we got enough that we could crush. And it went years most of the time. In 2019, my dad, Brent, you've all heard Brent speak, but he worked all his life in this field of gravel pits, and we went and got this overlay in 2019. And we've operated legally under this overlay, and ultimately the expansion, once again, this is all a byproduct of the work we do. We want to expand to the back because it's actually better, and that's what we started to do. Is there any questions I can answer?
So, yeah, and we won't be questioning the others, but since the company's here, questions for Dan and maybe the gentleman that's here.
Does it actually pull the dust and stuff away, having it on that portion of your property from local people?
Yeah, I mean, oh, yeah, for sure. It gets it significantly farther away from the road. There's a windbreak, there's a big hill there. Yeah, when we went to go get the overlay on the back, it was literally to move back there. You know, it's better for our business, the whole bit to have it back there. It's like I said, it's when it comes in, and you store it. Financially, crushing is very expensive. Even to buy a mobile crusher, you're talking starting at like $1.3 million. And that's not counting a $500,000 loader and an excavator, so we don't even own a crusher. This last time we hired it out to Geneva Rock. It was a contract, and we had a buildup because it had been so long. But so we spent more time this spring than we've ever crushed before. But we have very little there. There's no crusher on site. It's been, yeah. So we were wanting to clear the top to start stockpiling down on bottom instead on top.
Dan, do you know what how many more tons of material you'll have available to crush with this expansion? Do you know how much more you plan on putting down there?
Maybe exactly the same. That's one great thing that I feel like about. Listen, there's some stuff that's not talked about enough about recycling concrete and asphalt, and that there is huge emission and green recycling. It saves a whole bunch of money instead of just being thrown into a landfill and buried. Allen's grocery store was tore down 3-4 months ago. They had it tore down, hauled over to us. It was crushed, and it is currently used as road-based or asphalt in roads being built in Utah right now. It's probably all been recycled and reused. And I don't know how many tons of rebar we pulled out of it or pull out of the materials but it's a lot. It's surprisingly a lot of rebar, which is recycled. But to answer your question, this is not something it's a byproduct of what we do. It always will be.
So they keep saying expansion, which makes it sound like you're trying to grow the crushing side, but it sounds like you just want to expand to that lower portion.
When we initially started down this road in 22, we wanted to swap it onto the back, and that was a no-go. So, yeah.
So legally, you could expand the rock crushing side of things, but that's not really your plan.
Yeah. So one thing about aggregates, ultimately they're getting farther and farther and farther away. A lot of the concrete sand in Utah County comes out of Delta and pits that are far west of Utah. So it's being trucked in, made into concrete, and then trucked again. The same for Salt Lake County. Most of it's coming from Grantsville, Tooele area, being trucked in and then made into concrete and asphalt. Ultimately, our site is very location specific. Once I'll tell you that people that want to dump or buy aggregate for us, diesel fuel is the determining factor. The price per ton really doesn't make that big of a difference once you figure in the price of diesel fuel. That's the number one driving factor. So it's very local that people are wanting to use it.
Carla, can you bring that map up again?
While she's doing that, I noticed that there's like a pond or something just behind your property. Does this have any impact on that? Or do you know what that water source is?
We've worked side by side with the Crandalls for years. We love what they're doing. We've got along really well, helped each other out. They have a very specific kind of clay that's very useful for lining ponds. And one of the best ways to access it is through our property. And we've been more than willing to accommodate. From my knowledge, the next closest source for that clay is in Salina, Utah. So yeah.
That's what that pond is. They pull clay out of there.
Yeah, I mean, so the pond collects the irrigation water, which they water the grass and stuff that, you know, the plants that feed their animals, and their animals feed off of. I'm guessing, I don't want to speak for the Crandalls, and I'm not a cattle farmer by any means, so.
So looking at this map then, this pile of stuff on your property that's not colored purple, you just simply want to move that down to the lower section.
Correct.
So, and do your crushing down in that lower section rather than up here and use this property for whatever else your business needs to do.
Storing and crushing down below.
Okay.
So one question that we hear from comments is dust. Can you kind of address or talk about how the process of crushing works, whether you spray water on? Just talk about how they do the crushing. And then you talked about doing it twice a year for a 30-day period.
Yeah,
Does that sound right? And I mean, just address those two thoughts.
Yeah, so most of your typical recycle yards, they're really not fully committed recycle yards. I mean, you're talking your big gravel pits, right? And to run a full time, you have to have a consistent inflow and a consistent outflow to run it, which we don't even come close to have. Sorry, I forgot the question again.
So just to describe how the crushing operation works, because we don't know.
Yeah, so the material comes in, it's dumped. We process the concrete, which means we get the rebar out. We munch it with little munchers that they're not little, but munchers that we munch the concrete. Also sizes the material to 2 foot by 2 foot minus, so it'll fit into a crusher. And so we get the rebar out. When it's processed, it's separated. You know, there's 4 different products down there. We got clean concrete, clean asphalt. We've got rebar concrete, and then we've got blended asphalt and concrete.
Is there dust mitigation that goes on when they do the crushing, or how's that work?
I think we're putting, if I had to guess, somewhere between 20 and 30 gallons on it a day. 20,000 gallons, 20 or 30,000 gallons a day.
During the crushing operation or just overall?
We try and put it on the roads all day, every day. But yeah, we water the roads. We've also spent a lot of money on magnesium chloride. So magnesium chloride is, I don't know the science behind it, but it's a product. If you've been to like Fairview, or if you've been to South Dakota, they'll, you know, where there's a lot of dirt roads, they put it down, they spray this environmentally safe material, and it looks like the road is wet all the time.
So when you're talking about roads, you're talking about roads inside your property that you're
Correct.
putting that
I mean,
on.
they're lanes.
Yeah, sure.
Is that because the trucks coming in and out are actually the larger source of dust than the crushing itself? Or, I don't know, how do you estimate that one way or the other?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair assessment, I guess. But we, you know, ultimately, yeah, we magnesium chloride the main roads. So when you do water, the water lasts longer. And then we did our first mag chloride last fall. We did it again this spring, and it's one of those things that the more you do it, the better it takes, and it lasts over time. Yeah.
You spray water on the piles?
Yeah.
Let's break it down so they understand a little better about the whole crushing process.
This is Riley Thorpe.
So I've done the crushing for him. I manage the yard. I've been through a lot of meetings with you guys. I help Dan out a lot, but I just want to clarify a little bit on the crushing. So piles get dumped. There's a machine, okay? It has a shaker on the top. You put the material in it. It falls into an impactor, which impacts the material, breaks it up. From there, it goes onto a conveyor belt, which dumps it onto a screen. That screen separates it into various sizes, whatever the screens are, whatnot. In that whole process, we put water on it to mitigate the dust that comes off the machine so that there's not as much. Okay? So that's our main part of our dust suppression is that. As it comes off the machine, we also wet the piles too, which helps when the track hoe is picking it up and putting it in the machines, you know, to mitigate the dust too. And I think that kind of helps answer your questions. Yes, we use a lot of water to mitigate the dust on our property.
The piles, when they're watered, are more valuable. When we sell it, it's priced per ton, and with water on it makes it heavier. It's going to get the
That's
water.
why they water produce in the grocery store.
There you go. It's gonna get the water from us, or it's gonna get
I
the
used to
water
work
on the
at
job
Allen's.
site, and we might as well, be making the money. So. yeah.
Okay. So questions for the company?
Probably.
Well, yeah, I'd like to hear this other gentleman's presentation if we could.
Okay, we'll give you a few minutes here, and then we'll open it up for other public comments.
No, perfect. My name is Sam Bernard. Dan recently reached out to me in regards to more or less the compliance aspect of that facility itself. I've lived here in the Utah market now for 20 plus years within the construction industry. I've managed hundreds of facilities throughout the state for the Clyde family of companies, Staker Parsons. I'm doing a 770-acre project right now for the Utah Inland Port Authority. But when Dan reached out to me, he said, hey, come by my facility, and is this facility in compliance with the SWIP itself? So they have a SWIP that's in place, which is responsible for the stormwater discharge. That facility is not discharging stormwater off of the project itself or the property itself. So I know that they are in compliance there. And they've never received any citations from the state when it comes to, say, discharging stormwater. So that's a stormwater point there. When it comes to the air quality component, I've been on the receiving side of penalties in Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Nevada, Colorado, as well as Arizona for different operators. If I were a regulator at this point and someone came onto that facility, they would be in compliance. There's no issue with the facility operating because they are operating within the regulatory limits of the state and their air quality permit. I just wanted to make one clarification before I went on. I believe Carla had said the number of 5,000 tons. It's actually only 5 tons. At 5 tons, then you'd be at 100,000 tons of material that's processed, it's only 5 tons, not 5,000 tons. So I just wanted to make that clear distinction there.
That's what Alan at the state told me.
Okay. Yeah, and
He's a big fat liar.
yeah, so you can Google that or look that number up, but it's only 5 tons. So I just wanted to make sure that distinction was made there. But from a regulatory standpoint, if the state did come on site, what they're going to do is they're going to look at their watering logs. As you can see from those images there and previous Google images, you can see a clear path of water. So Dan or WPI is doing an extremely great job of keeping that ground wet for the haul roads for that equipment to travel throughout the facility itself. To the point of the spray bars. So in order to operate, if the state were called out, they're going to look at your watering logs, number one, and they're also going to look at your air quality permit, number two, to see which restrictions are in place for that facility in order to operate. So looking at those and presenting tonight and then visiting the facility, they're in full compliance. I believe when we sent over the staff notes, it had a copy of the air quality permit, a copy of their SWIP permit, as well as their MSHA and OSHA. So they're in full compliance at the facility level when it comes to that health and safety component. Being once again on the receiving end of these penalties at the same time, I understand the process as well as it doesn't make the news, a facility is out of compliance, but the state of Utah does a fantastic job when it comes to regulating these temporary sources or these stationary sources as they operate throughout the state of Utah. If there was really a problem with the state regulating the local operator, the EPA at that point would then interject and oversee the compliance effort there. Over the past 2 years, looking back at the history that's on the Division of Air Quality's website, they've never had any issues where that facility has been out of compliance. both with the SWIP as well as with the air quality component associated with their operation.
Okay, any questions for Sam? And then we'll conclude the company presentation. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Okay, we'll open this up for public comment. I have 3 of them up here, but again, anybody can come up here and we can go through it. So what I'm going to do is, since I'm so technologically advanced, I'm just going to set a timer. And when you hear the ding, we're done at 4 minutes. So just so that you have a chance to be able to do it. I don't know how else to control it. I could raise my hand like they do in debate, but I don't make a big show of it. So if you hear the ding, it's done. But I would like to read one that she asked me to read, and Heather Bullock has this comment. I've lived near a noisy demolition construction site, and it had a severe impact on my mental health. What mitigations will protect the neighbors? So we'll enter that into the minutes. I have 2 that have filled out, and I hope that they come up here. I've got one, Brent Sumption and Sharon Clayson. So, but again, you're welcome to come up. Anybody from the public, for or against, you are welcome to come up and make your statement and take 4 minutes. And we could go do this all night if you want.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Sharon Clayson, and I live about 2 blocks south of him. And I live right on Highway 51. And my issue is not, because I've been on the front line of Geneva Rock at the point of the mountain for 48 years, so I'm pretty familiar with what he does. But my thing is, as Springville grows, the traffic going south and north on Highway 51 has increasingly got worse. Since they opened the Dry Creek freeway exit, it's now even worse. And if I'm going to go south, I have to wait about 5 minutes to get out of my driveway. If I go north, sometimes it takes me 10 minutes to get out of the driveway. He's, not to be mean, but he's going to add huge big trucks going both ways. He has an acceleration lane for the trucks to accelerate to get up to some speed to merge into the southbound, but he doesn't have one for the northbound. And has that been something anyone has thought about?
Okay, thank you. All right.
Hello, my name is Mike Rogers. I live in Mapleton, Utah. I've owned a concrete cutting business named All Cuts Concrete for the last 23 years here in Utah. We specialize in concrete cutting and demolition of concrete. Mr. Sumption's property is very valuable to us, and that's why I'm here tonight. There's only a handful of locations that you can dump concrete and asphalt and dirt and things of this nature. And that is the problem. Shutting them down is a big problem because of location. Dan hit on it a minute ago with the price of diesel. So if I'm working in Santaquin, Salem, Spanish Fork, I'm going to go dump my product over at his lot. If I'm working north of Provo, I'm going to use Kenny Sting's lot. There's another one called Dunn, which is near Pleasant Grove, and then Point of the Mountain. Those are some just here in Utah County. So Dan hit the nail on the head when he said location is key because we're running a lot of expensive diesel running this material around. So shutting them down would be a very big problem for us. I know Dan for many years. He spent a lot of money perfecting that property. I'm pretty impressed with what they've done. So that's why I wanted to come here tonight and say, as a business owner, it's very valuable to have him and this material where we can dump to get rid of our concrete. Many times when I leave homeowners' property, when we do leave concrete there, they say, what can I do with this? And I say, well, you're welcome to take it to the dump, or I don't really care what you want to do with it. And a lot of people here in Utah are conscious about recycling. And they say, well, we don't want to take it to the dump. Dumps don't want it. Dan said that earlier, because when you bury concrete, it doesn't biodegrade. So it makes perfect sense to me to crush this stuff and put it back into the back into the roads. That's what homeowners like. When I tell them there's a place to recycle it, they usually take it there. It's also a lot cheaper. They don't charge us as much as the dumps to dump this material because the dumps do it off of weight. So recycling concrete is very valuable to us because it's a lot cheaper, and then we give that savings to the customer. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll say my piece and then sit down. Once again, Western Paving was established in 1964 in Springville, Utah. We bought our facility in 2007 down there. I love Springville. I care about Springville. It's where I'm from. If you drive by, I hope you feel like you can see how much we care, put a lot of money and effort into that property to not only help ourselves but help the community. We take a lot of I don't know that I'd say a lot, but a lot of DIYers and people doing their patios or driveways or whatever come down, and if they show us something that they're from Springville, we'll take it for free. The biggest thing is that we care about this community and we're sensitive. Ultimately, we want people to want us to be here. I imagine there'll come a day and a time where maybe they don't, and I understand that. My Western Paving, we used to be on 1600 South in Springville. I still have the sign to this day. Over by, maybe it's 1600 North, right on the boundary between Mapleton and Springville, but we care. As far as the traffic goes, ultimately, there shouldn't be any more traffic. I mean, I'm sure the 1600 South has added to it for sure. It needs to be expanded. The number that comes to mind when we built our offices, we put $700,000 just into the road. So you can imagine, you can imagine that's a pretty hefty build. We just for the road, bigger shoulders, an acceleration lane. We tried to do more, but that would include more involvement, and people didn't want to pony up the money to help improve that. But the wall, the traffic shouldn't be any more than what it is. We're basically right now we're crushed out. We have some material that people can come get, but aside from crushing, we're crushed out. And our intent is to crush once or twice a year, let it build up, but that all depends on the market. Sometimes 1 year, we've gone 3 years without needing to crush. So once again, we care about the community. My wife and I have to see all of you at the grocery store or whatever, and we want to continue to operate and care about the community, which is why we're here. We feel like we're doing this the right way. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So one quick comment. This is inappropriate for me, but Brad, just real fast to the comment in relationship to traffic. Just say 30 seconds.
Okay.
Sorry.
We just received the second to last vote to have SR 75 expanded to a 5-lane roadway from 1600 South all the way to Spanish Fork. At Evergreen Road, where that connects, there's a planned traffic signal that UDOT's already getting ready to install, put in, so that should help with the traffic.
Okay. Thank you very much. 51.
SR 51.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. That's what I heard too.
Hi, I'm Caroline Collette. I live in Springville. I live walking distance from this property, and I just wanted to note that we haven't ever had a problem with dust or with sound. We do get dust from the construction that's happening right on Dry Creek Parkway, but we don't get dust from any of the neighbors down this, like the light industry down the street on SR 51. So I think we're good.
Thank you.
I'm Brent Sumption. I'm Dan's father. I used to be, for 17 years, I worked for the Clyde companies and ended my career with them as a property and environmental manager, and worked with Sam in the process, and learned a lot about what it takes to meet the requirements of the state and local SWIP laws, all of the environmental protection laws. And so I've kind of tutored Dan all along the way as to how to best serve the community in protecting it from dust and stormwater runoff, those kinds of things. So I think he's really worked hard at it. One thing he didn't mention is he's set up a tank system there in the yard, so that he's got a large surge tank so that he can load his water trucks quickly. And that's been very helpful to keep the roads watered down and wetted, so that there's not a dust problem coming off the roads. In regards to the expansion of his business, I think the 100,000 tons that has been mentioned is a ways off. His business is going to grow with time. That's a given. There will be increases down the road as the infrastructure of Springville and Spanish Fork expand, but it's going to be gradual. And in the foreseeable future, I don't see him getting up to that 100,000 ton capacity on an annual production basis. So it's a smaller operation, and I think he's doing an excellent job taking care of the community and protecting the community from the impacts of his business. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett.
Thanks, Brent.
Thanks.
My name's Tim Parker. Yes, please. Don't start the clock yet.
I'll give you 15 seconds extra. Yeah, I know. It's all good. I'll restart you. How's that?
Okay. All right, thank you.
You ready?
Yep, I'm ready. My name's Tim Parker. I live at 2310 South State. I do believe I am the closest residence and business, well, not business, I'm closest residence to the Western Paving operation. I've lived there for 36 years now. I've heard a lot of misrepresentations today, and I'll call them out. They crush much more often. I have, on this phone, I can give you 10, 15 videos from different days of crushing going on. This is an example of where a preponderance of evidence is shown. This is a video I took. One's my wife's and one's mine. One was in March and one was in May of this year. Please run. Did I click that, ma'am?
Go down to the
Click
arrow.
the play button.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. That's why I've got a great assistant here.
It doesn't look like it's loaded the file.
It said something about you don't have permission to access the file. Is it stored elsewhere?
I can personally show you guys one.
No, I've stopped your time, so you're good here. Technical difficulties.
Yes, it is. I knew I'd have them.
It's a big file.
So bottom right there.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't look like it's gonna work.
Kind of right in the middle.
me do that earlier.
Somebody knows stuff.
Edit.
Yeah.
Champ. Let's do that one.
I don't have a clue.
Is it installed on here? Oh, there it is. Yep.
One more.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes that plays stubborn files. Nope.
Sorry. I tried. It's
Try the other one.
I appreciate it, thanks. All right, so I'll represent what's there. And this is a good reason to continue this hearing. I can bring you the videos next time. The videos I show in June was the dust was leaving the property, and I videoed it all the way up to Mapleton to Evergreen community, the Evergreen community. It was huge, a huge plume. My wife in March videoed, and we've got plenty more. I don't know, 40, 50, I'm not very good at yardage, but 40, 50 yard, or feet, I'll say, piles blowing off of it. The Springville code, where I'm getting at, is Springville code says 40 or 20 feet, it has to be 20 feet tall, and the cubic feet has to be so much. What I need the council to make sure is the council going to extend, are we going to give, since they're asking for 12 more acres, are they going to give, is the council going to say, okay, now you can expand 12 more acres of fill, even though they say they aren't going to do it. They also said that they only crushed in the winter, and it was only their own good, their waste product. And then right after they were approved, they put a big old sign out front, "We want your concrete." So there's been some misrepresentations here. Okay, yeah, per Springville code, it's a 20-foot height, and they shall not emit any dust, particles, fumes, or odors beyond the business property boundaries. Doesn't say only if it's under 25 mile-an-hour winds. It says shall and shall not. And then there's also the, I would like an answer from the council. There's also a $1,000-foot boundary from the residents. And I want to know if that's going to be maintained with this new property. And why is it only on the residents? You got 2-3 businesses right next door to it. Are their lives, are their lungs somehow less important than my lungs? And 7, they're only supposed to operate 7 to 7. They are there at 5:30 bringing in trucks in the morning. It's in constant violation. If it's under a business license, if Mr. Penrod here allowed a 600 foot variance in the code because we wanted to hold licensing, be able to hold something over their head, let's revoke their licenses when they don't do it. Let's make it something. And we don't have a code enforcement officer. I heard the two complaints. Both those I'm sure are mine. And I know there's been other complaints. And we don't have a code enforcement officer here to validate that. We haven't had a code enforcement officer for 2 years. So how can you get any kind of statistics from that?
I think we were at time, so.
Really? What I want is 100% dust mitigation or shut down that part of their operation. I don't want any dust off that property, just like it says in city code. I don't care about EPA regulations or nothing. It says no dust outside the boundaries. That's what I expect, and that's what the council should expect.
Thank you, Tim. We appreciate you coming.
Yeah. And Well, I'll leave it at that, but I would like the council also to offer or have Western Paving provide swabs, dust swabs, where you could go out into somebody's property, dust it. Do you have silica in here on your property? Do you have silica on this property over here? Do you have silica on this property over here? That would prove that the mitigation is not working.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah.
Does the dust come off only when they're crushing, or is it just all the time?
I'm glad you asked. When they're crushing, in the last 2 months, I'll give them credit. I've seen water, and I do see water on the roads going around. It dries out. My God, we got 105-degree temperatures. It dries out that day. The wind comes up. These photos would show pictures of a video of the dust flying. It goes. And then if you go at night, if you happen to drive by there at night when they've got their lights backlighting it, you'll see dust just on its own with no wind, just going up over.
Could we get his video sent to us?
Okay.
And/or pictures, either way, whatever.
Well, I'll give you all kinds.
Thank you, Tim. We appreciate
Thank you.
it. Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Yes.
Good evening, Council. My name is Wes Crandall. I represent Crandall Farms. We're the adjoining landowner directly west of WPI. I'd like to say WPI, Dan Sumption, their family have been great neighbors. We've never had any issues. We've always been able to work cordially with them in everything that we do. I guess what I would ask the City Council is that, one, we've always had a buffer with where they've been doing their crushing. And it's not quite clear to me just sitting here listening if they're expanding that crushing or just moving it. And so my petition to the City Council would just be, as Springville City continues to grow, that the City Council or the city officials study the public health and safety that these changes might affect the community, adjoining landowners, and just before that expansion happens. But thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wes.
Others? Okay, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a
Second.
second? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, give us some direction. John, Carla, what's our next step or no step? What is it that we do?
Well, now is your time to deliberate and
Okay.
to make a determination amongst yourselves if there is a preponderance of evidence that this use, if it does expand onto the property, if it will endanger the public health, safety, and welfare. If it does, then you've got to make that motion and on the record state why it does, why there is a preponderance of evidence. If not, then you can do nothing and it has the right to expand underneath state code.
Okay.
Can I ask a question before we deliberate
Yeah,
on that?
sure. Yeah.
Based on what you just said, does expanding include if they don't increase what they're doing? They pick up and they move as they said they're going to. Does that qualify as expanding or as moving?
I had the same question because if they are good neighbors, they try to be good neighbors. They're planning to just move their stuff, but legally they would be allowed to expand. Yes.
They would be, yes, and in fact, state law specifically states that because they're presumed to have the right now to move, I mean, there's some things we can do as a city, meaning this body, but it does specifically say that they can increase production or volume, and that's right in state law. So they could. Now, our position is they still have to follow city ordinance, even though they're on the new property, which would limit them somewhat. You heard Mr. Parker talk about what's in the city ordinance and a little bit from Carla, and so we do have some things that we could utilize from our city ordinance, but they can increase the business according to state law. So they could expand onto the property and increase, but they still have to meet the requirements of our ordinance. And so that does limit them on what they can and can't do as well.
Okay, time for deliberation, but I'd also open the City Council to being able to call anybody back up to the stand to answer any questions, whoever they might be. I don't care who that might be, just answer if you have some specific questions to ask, so.
I like calling witnesses. That sounds fun.
Kind of like that. Okay, questions, comments, and concerns, and then I'm gonna start on one end and go to the other as far as your thoughts and feelings, so.
I have another question.
Sure.
If we, as we're deliberating, decide that there's some concerns one way or the other, can we put a trigger in place that says if they expand, if they actually move to a larger thing, then there's mitigation that we want them to do, or we just assume that there would be expansion in this?
Not because of the state law. So if you allow them to move forward, meaning you don't find it by a preponderance of evidence that it's an endangerment, again, to the public health, safety, or welfare, then what happens is they are able just to move forward underneath what our current ordinance would limit them. And so we do have some limitations on our current ordinance that does limit cubic feet of this and cubic feet of that. And as Mr. Parker stated, we don't have something that says you have to be so far away from a business, but it does say you have to be so far away from a residence, and you can't be higher than a certain height, things like that. They'd have to follow that, but we can't add anything to it because the state law says we cannot add anything to it.
So does our ordinance, does it comply with these tonnage figures that Carla gave us? 100,000 tons of material produces 5 tons of dust? Was it 5 tons of dust? So if it's producing 5 tons of dust and our ordinance says so many cubic feet or whatever, is there a way to calculate whether or not that's acceptable under our ordinance, that 5 tons of dust?
Yeah, one of the things that our ordinance does state, and it's been pointed out, is there really shouldn't be any dust leaving the property underneath our ordinance. And so we have tried to cap it so that surrounding properties are not affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
So in answer to your question, they would be in violation of our ordinance because...
Just because it's getting
it's
out,
getting
not
out.
because of the weight factor?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's not in state code, that's a city code.
That's city code, yes. And so actually the permit is not as, meaning the permits of the state are not as restrictive as that.
So they, let's say, for example, they expand, we allow them to expand, you can still call them, have violations in relationship to dust and noise or whatever the case is based on city ordinance, correct?
That's the position we're taking. The state code is not 100% clear on that, but that's the position we would take, yes.
And how do we enforce that?
It would be through code enforcement.
Okay.
So it would be...
And although we don't have a code enforcement officer, we do have 2 officers that participate in code enforcement, the way I understand it. Is that correct, Chief?
Yeah, all officers participate in code enforcement. Any of our officers can write a citation on that.
How do you verify that dust was from them? I mean, they're out in farmland, and our rodeo ground is right there. I mean, how do we know if it's blowing across their property that it was all their stuff?
Well, again, that comes down to the evidence, because even though we cite them underneath the code enforcement process we have, that would go to the courts, and then both sides would have an opportunity to present evidence, meaning we as a city would present evidence showing it is coming off your property, then they would present evidence showing it is not. So
it's a court.
It is a court. It would become a court hearing, yes.
But that's separate from the state law that we're considering tonight.
Yes, that is separate from the state law. And so if they got to the point where they had to be permitted under the state, then the state could also take action if they violated the state permitting requirements.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question about stormwater runoff. I think you had said that there is no runoff on the property. Is that nothing runs off of the property?
Yes, so they are in compliance with their SWIP that was issued to them, and I believe that the staff may have received a copy of that more recently here.
Yeah, we did, and in your packet there was a little statement on each of these things. One of the things that SWIP also does is require that no dirt is coming off of the property onto the road. So it does a number of different things. But I think what has been talked about is that there's no dirt that is running into waterways or things that way.
Correct. Like, yeah, discharge of pollutants from the tracking out of vehicles off of the property itself. And I'd point out one thing, too. I don't know if the council has had the opportunity to visit the facility itself and see how they have their track out system set up. In some cases, you might see an operator just have gravel that you drive over, and the thought there is that the gravel will hit the tires and then the clots will come off. I would have to say that the WPI system that they have in place, where there is larger 6-inch minus granular rock, then there's a grate system where that dirt can fall off, and then there's another series of concrete embedded rock is the most elaborate system that I've seen in order to handle track out if vehicles are leaving that property itself.
Regarding stormwater, is there like a catch basin or anything that where stormwater collects, or it's just assumed that that water seeps into the ground?
Well, it all depends on, I guess, what are you, specifically driving at there? Do they have the potential to discharge, or is it a pollutant concern? So I can just answer
I'm thinking about the way we calculate stormwater runoff in the city. We like hard impacted areas where there's a lot of truck traffic, the water doesn't actually seep into that very well, right?
Right.
And that's a good chunk of this property. So I'm just wondering, the whole property slopes down away from the road.
Can I make a mention?
Yeah.
We have silt fencings up, which protect us from the backside, which is the lowest part of our property,
Okay.
And those are maintained, like he was saying,
Okay.
So we have our SWIP in place, to mediate it. So if the storm does come, it doesn't run off. It filters through that fence, and then it's just the water just.
Okay.
We have a 100-year storm tech system put in on
the top.
Okay.
As well as they have a stormwater manager that's on site at the that works for WPI as well. So that individual is trained by the state of Utah or has attended some seminars in order to more or less regulate the facility when it comes to the discharge of stormwater. After a rain event, then that individual will go out and make sure that there isn't any track out that's leaving the facility. In that scenario there, that driveway or that roadway is then swept. So after a storm event, that's the protocol in which the SWIP puts in place for the operator to execute.
Thank you.
We also have a SWIP inspector that goes around and does the same thing. It's just we only have one for a lot of different businesses, but we do have one.
Okay, very good. Okay, I'll start with comments and your thoughts. Mike?
Well, I'm a little bit concerned about Mr. Parker's comments, not being able to see the videos of the dust and what that is. I'd like to actually see that. If that's possible, can we get that before we end this meeting? Can you send that to us individually?
They're only 10-second clips. They're really easy to watch fast.
But we need to see them.
Yeah, I can show you once. I can show you.
No, just hold on here. I think what we're needing to see is the.
We'll go see if we can find out that I need a core.
Okay.
Okay, anyway, that'd be one of my concerns. I don't know how much of that is actually theirs without seeing the clips. It's like Jake said, that dust could be coming from anywhere. There's a lot of dust out in that area anyway. I mean, there's dirt roads, there's people driving on dirt roads, there's a construction down on 1600. There's all kinds of stuff that could be blown across that property, and without knowing exactly what's coming off there, I mean, it sounds to me like they're doing a pretty good job of mitigating dust. Yeah. Based on what we've heard from these experts that do it.
Okay. Logan?
I think the folks at WPI have shown over the years that they've been trying to operate in good faith with the city, and they've cooperated with us sometimes when we've, had some, I don't know what to say, but like maybe some run-ins with some code and stuff. So I appreciate the good work that they've done. I guess in my mind, I'm thinking about not just the business that they operate now, but the business that could be operated there under this new state law. You know, they have no intention to expand, but they could expand. And so I'm worried similarly about, you know, are we sure actually how much dust is or is not blowing off the site and where it's coming from? The SWIP, I know you guys do a good job. I've seen you kind of, like, it's not terrible, but every time I ride past in front of your place, it's my least favorite stretch of SR 51 because it is quite dusty and I get a lot of dust in my eyes and my, you know, my throat as I ride past. But my experience is maybe different than most people driving past. And then final question too, if a site like this, after being heavily used for this kind of stuff, if it's ever developed in the future, does it need to be rehabilitated or anything like that? Are there, like, do silicates get into the soil and cause health problems for a future subdivision or something like that? I don't know anything about that, and so if that's an issue, then I would be concerned about it.
We wouldn't know, and I don't know that's part of the.
I don't know.
It's a good question, but I don't know.
And that's part of why I was asking about runoff and the SWIP. So
yeah,
I mean, it is dirt, right?
Yeah. So silica derives from dirt itself. So if you have a rock and you crush that, that's the derivative of it when it first starts, right? So you take a large piece of aggregate, you crush it down, you have the potential to create crystalline silica. But in order to do that, that has to be in the powder form. So if you look at facilities that are regulated by the crystalline silica itself, those are glass manufacturing facilities. They're typically enclosed. So if you look at dust as a whole, at most of these facilities, it's usually considered a fugitive dust or nuisance dust. Most of the complaints that I've seen with the different operators typically come in the springtime, and they'll say, hey, construction's kicking up, but seasonal allergies also play into that time of the year. So if you look at sites historically, that's when those comments are typically made. But to answer your question more specifically, yes, if you excavate down or we come out here into the parking lot itself or into the grass, that will have a component of silica, but it won't be in the form of crystalline silica, which has to be ground down, not necessarily crushed down. So there's two differences there between crystalline and regular dirt, if you will.
So if this site was redeveloped at some point, it would not need that kind of remediation or anything?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, they would excavate down in order to get the footings and foundation in place, but there wouldn't be like a remedial action plan, which the state would come in and impose, or what's known as a phase one assessment. A phase one assessment would take place, but it's not like they're discharging pollutants, if you will, into the atmosphere or into the soil itself. So that is heavily regulated. When they develop that site, maybe on a future date, the state they'll have to go to the state and get a specific permit, but they're not discharging pollutants. It's just in the form of, like, say, combustible pollutants. It's just the nuisance associated with the process itself.
Thank you.
Okay.
We got it.
And I've got it working here too. I mean, if you guys can see it, I can show it, I guess, to the audience too.
It would probably be good if we could, Troy, just so everybody can see it.
Yeah. So are they watching it? I mean,
Go ahead.
I don't know which order you had them in, but we'll play them both.
Okay, that's looking from my property, half of my property, looking southbound. I'm sorry, looking northbound.
I only have one.
That's coming right off the property. If you watch it, you'll see how thick it is there. You can see the cars going through. You barely see some of the cars. I'm panning over to the Evergreen Cemetery, Evergreen subdivision. This was a clear day.
Was this a day they were crushing?
No, I don't believe so. No, this is a wind event, which we have every afternoon.
There were two videos, right? Was the other one?
I'm only seeing one.
Okay, this one will show the height, and look at the height of the piles and how high above the piles, and it's going the opposite direction. This also shows wind directions going one way one day, one way the other day.
So these two videos are two separate days.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
March and June.
Do you have to? I've only got
No.
one.
We'll turn this around after it's done.
I guess it's just tricky because I can't really see that this dust where exactly the source is. Like I can see the general area, but it is hard to say.
It's not a mountain that you're seeing there, it's their pile.
Yeah.
We haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, that's not the one I'm seeing.
That one yet.
Oh, this is okay.
That's out my wife's bedroom, that's out her workout room. She has asthma, migraines because of asthma.
So that pile that shows above the trailers there, that's what that's coming off of, is
That's
that?
their pile, yep. That's not a mountain range. It's a little over 20 feet. So anytime you have wind speeds in excess of 25 miles an hour, you have to understand that it's picking up dust from everything west of Highway 51.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes impossible to differentiate where the sources are coming from because there's a lot of disturbed area from the construction that's going on, of the highway that is going to be bringing traffic, up to 51.
Yeah, and that was part of my question earlier too, is how do we know exactly where this dust is coming from? Now, Mr. Parker's video shows that there's a mound there, and it looks pretty obvious that dust is coming off there. I can't tell for sure because I'm not standing there, but it appears to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if it's coming from somewhere else or not, but that was my question earlier. How do we tell where the dust is coming from? And I think Jake intimated to that direction as well. So, I don't know.
The thing with Division of Air Quality, they developed a specific protocol that has to be followed in order to evaluate a dust plume. City code does not.
Well, hold on. This is not a debate in the, no. You're not going to get a turn. We're answering a question from the city council, okay?
Go ahead and explain the process.
So it's actually the EPA. So the EPA has what's known as the Method 9 observation. In order to observe plumes of dust, you have to go and do a training every 6 months. So that's set up by the Utah Division of Air Quality. There's several operators that offer that training, and you go. But one of the key things is just your relationship to the sun. The sun typically I'll say typically, the sun needs to be in the background, not the foreground. So in the morning, for instance, if you're driving over the Point of the Mountain facility and you look towards the east where the sun is rising, motorists that are driving by typically call the Geneva facility, or they will call the Utah Division of Air Quality and make a complaint. If the Division of Air Quality comes out, they're going to make their Method 9 visible emission observation. And in the morning time, it's really tricky because the sun is coming from the east and you might be looking into the plume. But if you have that sun behind your back and you're looking out towards the west, that observation is different. It's subjective to the individual's eye, if you will, but it's a great starting point. But to the point of Brent there, it's really hard to determine where does that dust really come from. I know with the widening of, is that 1600 South that's down there? There's a lot of dust that's been generated from that project throughout the period of the construction itself. But when it comes to those storage piles, one thing that's nice about crushed concrete is you can actually wet the crushed concrete and it creates a crust around the material itself. So if you look back to the imagery that was up there, you'll see the wetting down of the roads, And at the same time, they're also wetting down those piles throughout the day. But when the wind does get above the 25 miles per hour, the state as well as the federal government looks at it as an act of God. So it's really out of the hands of the operator as long as he has his best management practices in place at that point.
But those rules, do those rules apply here?
I'm sorry.
Do the rules, the state rules you're mentioning apply? Are they exempt or are they a permitted facility?
No, so they are a permitted facility. So if you look at their air quality permit, which the staff has, there is an opacity limit that's stated, I believe, on page number 1 or page number 2. But in order to make that judgment, you have to be Method 9 certified in order to do that. You can't just do it off of the naked eye or make assumptions that they are out of compliance unless you've had that state sponsored training.
Thank you.
Okay.
But, can I continue just for a second with another question?
Sure.
So, is there a conflict between what you're talking about, Sam, and our city code, and what happens there? How do we determine where to go from what Sam's talking about and what we're talking about in our city code?
We are talking about two different things. The city code does not, it specifically states that dust should not leave the property or cannot leave the property. State permits, state regulations are different from that. And so as what has been presented, and I got a couple of the different regulations up here. I've got it over here. They have what's called opacity. I don't know if I'm even saying that right, but that is what you can see through the dust. So if you have 100% opacity, you can't see anything through the dust. Whereas as you go down, you can see more and more through the dust. And so on a crusher, for instance, they have different opacities depending on what is going on. And so they do allow for dust to come off the property underneath the state permit. Underneath our city ordinances, though, no dust should come off the property. And that's where these two things are colliding. The state has preempted us, but we're still taking the position that our ordinances apply because that was the use when the state came in. The state does talk about we can't put any more regulations on this use, but we already had that regulation on the use before the state preempted us. And so that's why we're taking that stance. Now, we mentioned this a little bit when, or at least I mentioned this a little bit when I first started. If we do mitigation measures on this, we can't put any mitigation measures that are more stringent underneath the state code. We can't put any mitigation measures that are more stringent than what these permits allow. So we can't say, hey, nothing comes off based upon the mitigation measure. We've got to fall back on our ordinance because we're talking two different things here, state and our ordinance. So.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we have to find a preponderance of evidence? Yes. To what?
Preponderance of evidence that this use, if it expands onto the new property, will endanger the public health, safety, and welfare.
Okay.
And so we are talking about two different things, and it is complicated in the sense that our ordinance says no dust. State law, and that's what everybody keeps on referring to, says there can be dust. And as I'm reading state regulations, if it's over 25 miles per hour, it's kind of confusing whether those numbers just go out the door anyway. So we're dealing with some things that aren't just simple; they're pretty complex.
Okay. That's okay, Mike?
Yeah, for now. I might
Okay.
come back, but
That's okay.
you know how I am.
Yeah, I do. Karen?
So I have a few questions too, and going back to what you were just talking about, there's the preponderance or the evidence of if you were to say, okay, yeah, this does have a health impact. If that health impact is tied to non-compliance with a state or local ordinance, then can we even put a mitigation in there, or is the mitigation the ordinance and the permit requirements that are already in place? Does that make any sense?
Well, let me just see if I understand. So right now, the mitigation measures are something that the council would decide within those 90 days. Underneath state law, though, those mitigation measures have to be reasonable, and they can't be, and let me just get the correct language here so I don't.
So they have to be reasonable and do not exceed requirements imposed by permits issued by a state agency, such as an air quality permit. So if you find by preponderance of evidence that this does endanger the public health, safety, and welfare, then what happens is it goes into this 90-day period where you can come up with mitigation measures, but they have to be reasonable and they cannot exceed the requirements of permits issued by a state agency as an air quality permit. Now that's something different though altogether than what our state or our city ordinance is. Mm-hmm. Our city ordinance is something where we can say, hey, you're in violation of our city ordinance, so we can go cite you, we can take you to court, and we can go that route. But when it comes to the expansion, we can't put more stuff on than what a state permit requires. Our position is, though, you still have to follow our city ordinance even if you expand. So if you're allowing dust to come off your property even in the expansion, then we're going to come cite you.
Okay.
Did I confuse you?
No,
I
I
mean,
think that
to me, the question, and we haven't gone all the way through this because we don't know how you're going to determine things today, but there are different levels of state permits. So there may be something you find is reasonable in this circumstance that is required by a state permit but may not be currently required by whatever permits they have now. So there'd be more research done into that.
So we don't really know what they're falling under right now as far as permitting regulations.
Right. I don't think that's been submitted.
No. Well, we've seen, we know what their permit is. They've provided that. But the way the state code reads is, I think, a little bit more general than what I think you just said, because it says that they cannot exceed requirements imposed by permits issued by a state agency, such as air quality. So you can't go, hey, if the state permit is here, we can't go up here. If a state permit's here, we got to stay either equal or below.
I think my question is specifically, and I don't know the classifications, so in terms of what the state permits are on SWIP or air quality, but if the state has different classifications of permits, I mean, to me, I read it as if the state has a permit that has such a requirement, that could be found to be reasonable by the city council. Do you read that different, even if they don't have that permit?
Yeah, so I think maybe I do. I think you could look at all the state permits.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
And you can say, hey, looking at all the state permits, we can't go below what they
we can't go above what those requirements
are. We got to stay equal or below. Yeah, right. I would agree with that.
But then doesn't our ordinance go above that?
It does, but that is what they're vested. What's that?
In some areas.
In some areas, but that's what they're vested in currently. So the way that I look at it is they're vested in our current ordinance, and they're going to expand that use, which they're vested in, onto another property, which would mean our ordinance would follow that use. But if we are to do mitigation measures, we're already above on our ordinance. I don't think we can add anything when it comes to the dust. Now, there might be something else out there that we might say, hey, we can get it here, we can get it there, type of a thing, meaning we can add more to it.
Okay.
So just to be clear that I want to make sure I understand. If they expand their business and they're crushing way more rock, our ordinance says no dust shall leave the property.
That is
and
correct.
That still would apply.
That's the way that we are reading it, yes. Now, one thing you got to be careful of is they've already preempted us in 2025, meaning the state has. They've shown already a tendency to get in and say, hey, this use is so important to the state, we're going to take some authority away from the cities. Now they could do that more and more to where maybe now they're just going to do everything through permits. And so what I'm saying is eventually the state could take over this use altogether.
Mm-hmm.
But today, that's how it stands.
Yes, and then, so right now our position is no, we have the ability to continue with the ordinance we have. There are provisions in the state code that say we can't add additional regulations to something that's already been vested.
Okay, Jake. Oh, sorry, Karen.
Sorry, I had another question.
I really passed you by, didn't I? My apologies to you. Please continue.
Our expert witness, I apologize, I didn't write your name down. Sam, can you tell me about you, your credentials, what your relationship is with Western Paving, background?
Sam Bernard, 20 years here in the state of Utah, construction management, and I spent 6 years with Clyde Companies, managing facilities in Utah and the surrounding states. I'm currently doing a project for the Utah Inland Port Authority where we're on 770 acres, moving roughly 3 million cubic yards of waste on that project. So I'm familiar with the air quality component associated with moving large amounts of sand and gravel as well as waste itself. And I do it for household names when it comes to construction projects and who I consult with. So I consult currently for Target Corporation. I've done 4 of those stores here in the state of Utah, doing a couple of those in Colorado, and dust comes up quite often when we're moving large tracts of ground or dirt itself there. So just well versed with the process itself. But once again, the one thing I do want to bring up is the state does a great job. If there was really an issue, you would have state regulators that would have been out here a long time ago in order to address that situation. It's as simple as a phone call. If a citizen was concerned, they can call the state would come out, and then they would assess the facility. Given that the state hasn't been out to that facility over the past 2 years, nor do they have large air monitoring centers, if you will, which they tow around to test the air quality, it's really not an issue within this area here. Yes, it becomes a nuisance when it's all said and done with the amount of construction that's taking place on 1600 and the surrounding areas. And with the widening of that road, it's only going to be a concern once they start cutting back into that road there. But from a compliance standpoint, that facility, if a regulator was to out tomorrow, would fall into compliance with the state of Utah.
So can you tell me a little bit about how you determined that they are within compliance with OSHA and the other regulations that you were speaking on earlier?
Yes, so I'll go through the SWIP component first. Their SWIP log is up to date. You guys have a copy, or I won't say you guys, but the council has a copy of the SWIP plan itself, and that's kind of self-explanatory when they're having to do SWIP monitoring after storm events or rain events there. When it comes to the air quality component, their air quality permit is current, and that's in place. There are measures within that air quality permit that go over the crushing process and the opacity at that drop point itself, and when moisture or water has to go across the spray bars there. When it comes time for the component of the MSHA and OSHA, I looked at who was named on that and if they're local or if it's still current. But all of the 4 items that we touched on, the SWIP, the OSHA, the MSHA, as well as the air quality permit, they're all valid within the state of Utah currently.
Okay, Thank you. That's all for now, Mr. Prosecutor.
Jake?
Tim helped clarify quite a bit for me actually today, because he's been probably our most frequent person to come and talk, honestly. And so it's been in my mind, like, how bad is this problem? I happened to be, I think it was June, the end of June last year. I was at Chick-fil-A when I saw a storm blowing in and the wind just kicked up crazy. And I thought, this is perfect. And I drove over, went in between his property and there's some, I didn't even know it existed, a little dirt road that goes out there. Parked right there, wind was in my face, and I just waited. I thought my car's going to be covered in dust. I expected the plume that you showed in your video. And I waited until it was 30 minutes. My wife's frozen lemonade was no longer frozen by the time I got home. And there was no dust, none. And then the rain started to fall, and I thought, oh, well, there's not going to be any more dust, right? But then as I listened to them present, I thought, oh, I was there during a time when they were not crushing, so didn't make a difference. But to hear that plume is coming off at all times in wind events, I didn't find that to be true. I was there. nothing happened. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it was a wind event, and I didn't get the dust in my face. So I don't know.
Okay. Well, we spent a great deal of time on this. We had a chance to kind of think it through, and I think the course of action, correct me if I'm wrong, Troy and John, is to ask if there's a motion to state that there's a preponderance of evidence for the public safety, what is it? Public health,
safety
and welfare, to have a motion to ask for the plan to be submitted to the city within the next 90 days. Does that sound right?
And if you find that there is an endangerment to public health, safety, and or welfare, we need to also state on the record what your findings are, so we have that on the record.
Yeah, okay. Just to one clarification, if you make that, they submit their plan, and they could do it in 1 day or a year. The statute's silent as to that. But once they've submitted their operational plan, we have 90 days.
Okay. Yes. All right, then I will open this up for a motion to this effect, that there's, if you could state that for the record.
That you find a preponderance of evidence that expanding this use onto the new property that's proposed would endanger the public health, safety, and welfare. That's a lot, I know.
Okay. Would anyone like to make that motion? Okay, there is no motion, so it allows them to do the expansion according to state law.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move to the next item.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments.
Yes,
very helpful.
Really appreciate it. I hope the next items won't take us long, but they may.
We like talking about planning.
Okay, Josh, you're up for the station area plan.
Mayor, there may be people, well, there probably are people here for that. I'm just sensitive. I know you've got more things going on tonight. We don't have a ton pressing on this, so I guess we'll see how it works out on this particular item. Time is not pressing us.
I'm not under pressure anymore.
Okay.
So you're thinking that maybe you'll want to...
Well, I was going to say, if there wasn't pressure and there wasn't a lot of interest, but there are people from the public here for this item.
Okay, okay, sounds good. All right, Josh, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So the station area plan. Before I really dive into the presentation, I wanted to give some context to where we're at right now in the area in general and related projects. We'll talk a little bit about the whys of station area plans and the legislation that required them. But for context, this is primarily driven by the anticipated construction of a commuter rail system, or the southern extension of the front runner train to Payson. Currently, we have very little insight into when that may occur. The current preliminary engineering and environmental review process is being wrapped up, essentially shelved due to unclear parameters around potential funding in the future and other project elements. So in my experience, you typically wouldn't just kind of finish up where you were and wrap it up and put a memo on the top of it for somebody to find later. If you had hope that in the near term of 5 years or so that a project was going to move. I may be wrong, but we are likely potentially in a significantly similar place in regards to the arrival of Frontrunner as we were when we first adopted the Westfield's plan in the Village Center zone more than 20 years ago. I hope not, but that does bear on our discussions. And knowing that, I'm interested in the council's feedback regarding the desire to continue to move forward with adopting the plan and discussing it, or potentially to direct staff to put the plan on the shelf and come back to it later. We think there's merit to what we've done, but most importantly, we are interested in hearing your feedback about the plan so that as we craft the general plan, we have all the information that we can glean from you, and we make sure the general plan aligns with what we're hearing. Because right now, the general plan essentially says, do that in reference to the station area plan. So I just wanted to contextualize that a little bit before starting my presentation.
So can I just create maybe some questions, and you can address these? Do we have to have a station area plan, yes or no?
No.
Okay.
Can I ask
weird
a question?
Short answer, no.
Yeah, yes, okay, sure.
So
My wife says I waggle my head a lot.
There was some kind of meeting we were in with, I don't even remember who it was, but in order for UTA to expand south, the cities all have to have a station area plan. Is that true?
No.
Okay.
The environmental work and the planning work is based on and anticipates the planning the cities have in place, and the funding opportunities and the way that the project may qualify for especially federal funds is impacted by the anticipated land use around the stations. So if every community said, we're going to make that a farm, that would affect the viability of the project in seeking funding. But it is not a statutory requirement that the cities adopt these plans in order for UTA to make that capital investment.
But once a station is built, then we would have to have a station area plan?
Correct. Under the current law, yes.
Would there be merit to, as we go through this, thinking in relationship to shelving it, but listing some things maybe that we may say, you know, we don't particularly like, whatever the case might be, and list items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that here are our concerns with this stationary plan, but we're going to shelf it rather than try to address them before we actually finalize it.
Yeah, that's definitely a path to move. If there are substantial concerns, and instead of spending additional time trying to work through those, we put it on the shelf. If there are not, and we generally concur that the plan is a good document, it's something that we support, then it would provide certainty and, well, not certainty, but it would provide guidance to property owners and other people making investments that is the adopted policy of the city. And the plan is an improvement in terms of policy over the previous planning work we've done for the area. But you've essentially summarized the decision tree as to approaching this item tonight.
But is that if it's adopted, or if we just don't act on it tonight, but they give you guidance?
Oh, I think if we don't act on it, it does not give property owners and other actors the same amount of certainty as to what the council wants to see as it would be if it was enacted or adopted. We can glean useful information, but the document itself provides a really solid policy foundation for further work in terms of zoning and other development entitlements.
Okay, not sure what that meant, but go ahead, why don't you make your presentation and.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Property owners would have more confidence in what you wanted to do here if you adopted the plan.
We can do that just under a general plan also.
You can.
Yes.
It would not have the specificity, the level of detail, and the topical areas this plan has. That's just not within the scope of the general plan. But the general plan could communicate general policy guidance regarding the station area.
Well, probably just a good time for me to say, I think knowing, I reemphasize knowing that a front runner is going to happen, knowing the timetable, changes the entire dynamics of what I think ought to go there in relationship. That's just me talking. Because if the front runner is being shelved or the environmental is being shelved and we're going to kind of wait for funding and see how things go, I mean, Mike and I could be dead before it happens, and I don't want something to be built there that would look out of place because no front runner exists. If I knew that a front runner was going to come in 2028 and they had the funding in place, I think that's an entirely different set of problems and circumstances. That's just me talking. So my thought is to go through it, look at it, shelf it, but come up with some thoughts in relationship to what we feel about it. But that's I'm only one person here. So, but anyway, anybody like to make any comments? If not, we'll just dive into the stationary plan. So,
all right. So the existing planning for this area really goes back to the annexation of the Westfields area. The Westfields Community Plan was adopted in 2002. It anticipated a village center that would have a mix of commercial, office, and residential uses, including an intermodal transit center, and intermodal meaning that there would be multiple modes of transit, local bus, express bus, commuter rail, or other types of what we would call fixed guideway transit that goes only in one place on a rail or in a specific lane. That was, and it also anticipated there being a significant amount of commuter parking, again, local bus connection service, and the physical form was anticipated, or the policy was to encourage traditional mixed-use buildings at this scale or of the form that we see in downtown or traditional small-town Main Street. Some of the goals in this, in the Westfields plan for this area was to create a community core that has residential neighborhoods around it that have a mix of housing types, open space, parks, public buildings, and that it could really be a node where all the people living in the Westfields could have a center for daily needs and civic engagement and activities, schooling, all of those things. One of the objectives to achieve this is to create that community core by creating mixed-use transit-oriented development and then more neighborhood commercial for the area east of 1200 West, to bring shopping, housing, and employment closer together like we've discussed, and truly make a walkable community. This map you have here is essentially the land use map from the Westfields plan, allocating different land use types ranging from low density residential to medium high density residential, mixed use, and other business types of uses throughout the Westfields. The area that we're really looking at in the general plan is everything, in the station area plan, is everything west of 1200 West to 1750 West up to about Center Street. So it's really this box here as reflected in this current Westfields community plan. So station area plans are a plan for the land surrounding a fixed guideway transit station. As I mentioned, fixed guideway is trains on a track or bus in a dedicated guideway like the BRT in Provo. And if it doesn't have its own dedicated lane with barriers for a certain percentage of the route, it actually doesn't qualify as a fixed guideway or as a BRT system. So just be glad we're not Provo and they had to do a station area plan for every BRT stop, plus the commuter rail stop. It should include housing, planning for business, industry, transportation, public life, and the legislation has as its goal for these plans to enable neighborhoods where residents can access all the things they need for daily living. It was implemented by House Bill 462, and it specifically mandated that these plans increase the availability and affordability of housing, including moderate income housing, promote sustainable environmental conditions, enable access to opportunities, and increase transportation choices and connections. It needs to be, to qualify under this legislation, it has to be approved by Springville from the legislative body, who is the city council, and then be certified by MAG through essentially a committee made up of the mayors within the Mountain Land Association of Governments. Our proposed plan meets all these requirements, and we've added a memo detailing that just to make it clear. After review with our long-range planner at MAG, he concurs that the plan from his evaluation meets the requirements established by House Bill 462. The process we undertook to get here was really to identify this area, and you can see it here. This was essentially the first scope area, and then we evaluated and said, you know, most of the area to the east of 1200 West has already been developed, so that was primarily excluded from the detailed planning of the station area plan. Some of the guiding questions that we asked ourselves as we approached the planning process is how do we design for people living here that aren't here yet? How do we anticipate their needs and what may make a good neighborhood? And how do we create an economically sustainable core here that can provide some retail services and daily needs without competing with Springville's other retail areas? And how do we integrate what is at the heart of Springville's community values and traditions into a new kind of mixed-use development, a new village center? And that really rolls into how do we create a sense of place somewhere that has identity and feels has a positive identity, reflects Springville, and has a sense of place in what right now is essentially farmland. So as we evaluated these guiding principles, we worked through the planning process, and with input from citizens, property owners, and other stakeholders, some of the principles that emerged were that streets in this area should be for all users while prioritizing pedestrian comfort and bicycle safety. Residential options should be mixed and provide opportunities for multi-generational living for people of different economic and socioeconomic situations, and for it to be accessible broadly to people who wanted to live here. We wanted public spaces that encourage planned and spontaneous meetings, places where you just happen to see somebody, because the neighborhood is one that encourages you and makes it comfortable for you to be out and about. Capturing the value of a potential transit investment is also very important. We very strongly wanted to make sure that the area didn't feel separate or different from its surroundings, that it was very well connected and felt just like another piece of the fabric of the city. I don't want it to be identifiable from the air as you're looking at an aerial imagery with a little entry sign. You're now entering the station area. I want it to feel like an integrated part of Springville. And I was saying but really the input we received told us that was important to people. And then to really take Springville's visual vocabulary of building form and style and bring that into the area. Some of the opportunities that the plan presents us is to expand options for residential housing like the state statute asks us to create a mixed-use core that responds to market demand in the area. We have a significant and growing population in the Westfields, and other than the retail and services we have right now that are accessible within that Westfields area between the railroad tracks is really limited to the Smiths and some of the Smiths block and some of the services to the east. We found it important and a good opportunity to expand trail connections both along rail right-of-ways and from existing trail networks outside of the area to make sure that the station and the area as a whole was well connected and accessible through all different modes of transportations. And then to create public gathering spaces and open space, build in such a way to increase ridership and also to accommodate additional transit infrastructure, the local bus service and other things that really make these nodes work well. And then again, we wanted to create a sense of place there that felt like Springville. So our proposed plan has a number of elements in it. It proposes a a street network policy, essentially, that we want to continue the fine-grained, small block, well-connected network of roads that we have in the Westfields and that are a result of the planning that was done initially. We want to continue that. We want to center on and respect the front-runner station in terms of access, visual character in the area, and the location of parking and other amenities that make passengers' first experience of getting off the train one of arriving in Springville and arriving in a great place and not getting off the train in a parking lot. And we also want to integrate parks, trails, and open space so that we can maintain our level of service in our Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan. We want to make sure that these places are appropriately scaled, designed, and programmed to reflect the needs of this area and broader needs in the community. We want to focus on, or the plan proposes a focus on the village core with commercial and mixed use lined along an east-west corridor traversing the site from 1200 West to the station itself. And then the plan assigns policy or high-level land use types generally throughout the area. And as you can see from the colors, if you can, I can see them, so hopefully everyone can kind of see them. The intensity, and except for the commercial, which the red kind of throws you off, but the intensity of development generally and of residential intensity is highest immediately adjacent to the station, and then tapers off to intensities that are comparable to the surrounding neighborhoods as we go to the north and south. And the plan proposes primarily focusing on commercial development to the north of 400 West and the west side of the rail. So this is right here is the 7-Eleven and the Taco Bell. But contrary to or different from previous planning, the plan recommends that residential be accommodated on the the west side of the tracks, south of existing Desert Industries and Bishop Storehouse, while providing commercial opportunities of an appropriate scale along 1750 West. Some of the numerical outcomes from the planning process, we can start with dwelling units. The stationary plan has essentially a max yield of 1,311 units. Our 2002 Westfields community plan has 1,352, so essentially the same or slightly less in our current planning. But what is actually interesting about that is that we have greatly increased the commercial acreage that we're planning for, because we're looking at area west of the tracks that was not looked at in the Westfields plan. And we have a larger total acreage, so our net residential density is actually less than was proposed in the original Westfields community plan. We're proposing around 9 acres of parks in that as well. And there wasn't, aside from kind of the general vision, pretty picture plan in the Westfields plan, there wasn't a specific mandate for the location or provision of parks. So the feedback we received as we went through the this final kind of recommendation process with the Planning Commission. In our first public meeting last year, we heard a lot of public feedback about concern over the 900 South overpass. And that's an overpass that's proposed by UTA as part of their planning to carry 900 South from 1200 West to 1750 West on a grade separated bridge over the railroad tracks, essentially like 400 South is right now. The city's preference and the planning preference there would be to have an at-grade crossing, but it became readily apparent, and the mayor was privy to many more of those discussions than I was, that was not going to be something that was possible. So while we retain in the plan the policy recommendation that we'd prefer that, we do understand that UTA's planning anticipates that 900 South overpass. That is not a recommendation or something that's derived from our planning, but something that UTA has proposed, and the only feasible way to get a street across the tracks between 400 South and 1600 South. So we're doing our best in the plan to accommodate that. There were also concerns, especially for people living in Camelot, that have had a bad time with groundwater and other issues over the past 20 years. And they wanted to make sure that any new development in this site wouldn't further compound any issues they're experiencing. Traffic and circulation were, of course, concerns. What's nice is that our transportation network, as well as all of our other utility systems, have been designed in anticipation of the development proposed in the original Westfields Community Plan, and because we're staying within those parameters, we're confident that we can accommodate the development. Neighborhood compatibility was another important consideration that was brought up, and we've been particularly sensitive to that in the recommendations as to how the development transitions into existing neighborhoods. There's also a number of members of the public that came to express support for transit-oriented growth and for more efficient and compact development patterns and efficient use of our existing infrastructure investments. The Commission had some feedback, and we addressed those concerns and brought it back to them earlier this year. But their previous concerns were primarily centered around the fact that the plan looked very specific and very polished, that there were blocks and we had, trees and outlines of curbs, that it looked very set. And so that's why we went back and reworked some stuff to go to that bubble diagram you saw on the land use page, so that it was clear that the plan was proposing a general assignment of development across the area, not saying every street will be here or there and this is exactly what it's going to look like, but to make the map reflect the high-level policy function of the plan. And after we addressed their concerns early this year, the Planning Commission did recommend approval on a 4-1 vote. We had 2 members absent at that meeting, but it comes to you on a 4-1 recommendation from the Planning Commission. And if you were to adopt this plan and somebody asks you, well, when is something going to be built down there? You could tell them that MAG needs to certify the plan. We would need to prepare and adopt zoning, prepare and present zoning to the City Council for adoption. Then we would have to go through subdivision processes, development, building infrastructure, and finally somebody would need to apply for a building permit. So even if the council chooses to move forward with adopting the plan tonight, there are multiple additional steps before anything comes out of the ground, and the zoning would be a key opportunity for the public to re-engage and for the council to make decisions about the on-the-ground regulations that would guide development here based on the policies in the plan. That is my presentation.
So Josh, if we adopt this plan and set it in motion and UTA comes tomorrow or 5 years or 10 years or whatever and says, no, we're not bringing the train, that's never going to happen, will this plan still work?
I believe the general outline of this plan will work, yes, because it's based on traditional neighborhood development, which we've espoused in the Westfields. It has a compact, connected grid. It has a mix of uses, all things that we've always anticipated in the Westfields. The intensity of those uses and some of the site-specific recommended or conceptual level site design elements may change. Some of the regulatory provisions regarding parking or development intensity may need to be reevaluated, but the overall framework of the plan as a document to guide the development of this area from a policy level, I think would be still very, very useful.
My problem is that it's going to be a transit-oriented development with no transit. You're going to have 4-story buildings down there in the middle of nowhere, looking awful awkward.
So did we get more information than what I know of that they're not planning on coming, or we just have no clue?
Well, Just was to a meeting, and apparently
they're not moving forward as far as we thought they would at this current phase.
And we're not under any obligation to approve this. So.
Yeah, the state statute only applies if you're state your transit facilities under construction, or you already had one, you had a certain period of time, or when a developer makes a qualifying application. So we're not subject to any of those provisions. We took the opportunity to get ahead of the curve, to set policy and plan proactively, and we're able to take advantage of some grant money that UTA had available to cover the cost of our consultant team for this plan. So it was a great opportunity to go through the planning process to update our ideas for this area.
You want to talk about parking?
Sure. The plan has a broad policy statement that in these type of developments, it's appropriate to consider reducing minimum parking requirements. And in general, the weight of the research in parking in a city building favors reducing or removing rigid parking minimums, but it doesn't suggest ignoring parking demand. It favors replacing generalized mandates with context-sensitive provisions, shared parking, and active management of curb parking. So from a policy perspective, the plan very generally says that the council should consider not just applying the standard off-street parking requirements that are applied across the city, but that this context, both from its form of development, being a compact mixed-use development, and potentially being transit adjacent, should it cause us to evaluate those recommendations.
It's not transit. We don't have a front runner coming. And you're asking for a reduction in the parking, which would perhaps make a lot of sense if it has a front runner coming, but it's not.
Exactly. That's why, though, we.
But you're reducing the parking down to one parking spot per unit.
There's a policy recommendation in the document that suggests evaluating that.
Yeah, and I'm just saying you can't do that with no transit there. So I have some real concerns about the parking. I have concerns about a 4-story building down there with no evaluation.
But I mean,
and I should let others talk, but I just, as I read this, I got more frustrated and madder about this because it just doesn't fit unless there is a front runner, and we don't have it.
For context, it really is very similar to Lakeside.
Josh, you and I will never come to grips on this. It is not. It's a 4-story building right next to an overpass going down 4th South, and everything else is 1 and 2 stories. It's just going to look really funny.
Yeah, I don't argue with that. I've just for context, the development we're anticipating here is not wildly different from things we've proposed in other areas of the city.
But there is some consideration for location and
Absolutely.
where different things work. Lakeside Landing is a very different location than what we're looking at right here geographically. And
yes,
so
but of similar
point,
density and intensity.
Sure. But to the mayor's point, places for things
Yes,
where things
absolutely.
work better. Do you mind if I ask a question?
No,
or do you have
please.
more?
No, go ahead.
Okay. My concern, among others, is along by, what is this, 900 South? We have S3 and S4, and I think that is a slightly higher density of residential. Yeah. So you've got the S2 bubble, and then you have the S3 and S4. What is the benefit of having a small pocket of residential that is completely cut off by a roadway that is wide, that goes to back fences, that has a bridge and a railway, and the only access to it is either from that very busy road or through a commercial area? And tell me what you're thinking there, why that would be a benefit.
And this is something I didn't review. The UTA preliminary planning for the area anticipates at least one pedestrian bridge in the vicinity of the station to provide east-west access across the rail just to pedestrians. So without that, and considering the impact of the overpass, that southwestern portion could be isolated, and we may need to reevaluate that. We do anticipate we'll have north-south connectivity along the rail underneath the overpass. So from a pedestrian walk distance, you could get to the Camelot neighborhood and its perimeter trail pretty directly. But you're correct in questioning, whether that chunk of commercial or that chunk of residential makes sense, especially if we don't see transit there, we don't see a pedestrian overpass, and that's really something that we evaluate, knowing that just like the plan we've had since 2002, planned in anticipation of an outcome, doesn't mean that we've actually implemented anything there, and the council retains the ability to take the steps to change zoning. But if the concerns about making planning recommendations that are too what's the word I'm looking for? Unsure or based on really uncertain outcomes, then that goes to the point we talked about initially in the mayor's concerns about putting the plan away until we have more certainty about what kind of transit investment we may have here.
Would it make sense to develop two different plans? One that assumes a front runner's not coming, one that assumes that they are, and then as things progress and we know, is development coming, are there applications that are coming, and we need to make sure there's a plan in place, which plan is going to be the one that is on the books?
Well, currently, it would be nice to have multiple scenario plans. I don't think that's feasible right now. I don't anticipate that we will be surprised by development in this area. There's essentially one major property owner, and we're very connected in terms of their plans for this area. Sometimes they're going to happen really quick, and sometimes they have more of an eternal perspective in terms of their time frame. But having alternate plans based on the transit outcome, I think we really address that to say if somebody comes in and wants to develop there, we say, well, we don't have any idea about the transit, and we have a current plan that basically says X in the Westfields plan, and we're comfortable with you moving forward with that. Or we use any of the other zoning tools we'll be building to implement the general plan to apply appropriate zoning here if plans for commuter rail or other transit infrastructure change.
Was that property owner really only interested in selling if this happens, or are they selling it either way?
No, I don't have any indication that the property owner is looking for a sale. Sometimes they've communicated that they may develop certain areas and sell others for development, but generally land reserve is just holding this site until the market conditions and their development needs come together.
They do. There is a representative here if you have questions of the landowner.
There he is. That's why I was turning around earlier.
I didn't recognize him. He doesn't have a shirt and tie on. Good for you. Good for you.
Just blending in.
Okay, I think the question on the table is, do you want to approve this as presented? Do you want to instruct Josh to go back and to amend this? Do you want to shelf it with permanently, or do you want to shelf it with some concerns? And you can also say, we want to think about it and we'll bring it back for another meeting.
Excuse me, my voice just cracked. I would very much like to move forward with it. I mean, we have put in a lot of work. The other community board, the planning commission has put in a lot of work. All of the residents have engaged all along with this. And yeah, we don't know exactly how soon the front runner is going to come, but I do think it is an inevitability that the state is going to build a front runner extension south. The numbers just make too much sense for it to not happen. When will it happen? I wish it was a lot sooner. But with or without a front runner station there, I think this kind of land use makes a lot of sense. It's a great spot. There's churches and there's schools and there's parks and there's grocery stores and there's barbershops. There's all kinds of amenities that people need. And when we're talking about traffic, which is what people are always talking about, right? Putting people in proximity to their destinations is the way to address traffic. And we've done a lot of good work. Things like, 1200 West will soon connect through. The new Dry Creek Parkway now connects. So there are now more options, and there's more coming. If people, if we see homes go in here, even at a higher density without a train station, I think that we actually do have pretty decent infrastructure set up and things coming online that will let those people still move pretty well, even if they're just driving cars. But because they're in proximity to destinations, for a lot of these trips, they won't have to drive cars. Yeah, maybe their daily commute, but some of these people really can walk or bike over to Smith's. It's pretty pleasant thing to do. Pop over to Zeppi's on an evening, drop your kids off right there at Meadowbrook Elementary. I think I would prefer that we go ahead and adopt this plan and then make amendments later if we need to, particularly where right now it's pretty high level and we haven't gotten down into the nitty-gritty of exactly how many parking spaces per dwelling unit. Those things can be addressed later if we feel like Front Runner keeps getting kicked down the road, but I think it makes more sense to adopt it now so we at least have something good in place and we're ready to go.
Okay, other comments?
I agree with Logan. I mean, the data that we get from the Chem Gardner Institute says there's going to be a lot of people here, so Front Runner's going to have to come, and I'd like to see a plan in place, but I also agree with the mayor. He and I are going to be dead before that ever happens. But I think it's important to put this plan in place before that does happen. So they're going to have to come south because of the number of people that are going to be here in Utah County.
Okay, other comments?
I'm curious, Troy, on your opinion, given your experience and time here with the city, what would your recommendation be?
It's an interesting one. The current zoning in place allows a developer to do something similar to what's on the screen there in terms of intensity and uses. It won't be used primarily because it's out of date. We've been handling that with other developers through individual form-based codes. General plan on track for the end of the year. Zoning's going to come behind it. So regardless of whether this plan's in place or not, you'll be acting on a zoning scheme or criteria that will change this from village center to something else, because this doesn't change it at all. It just says what the concept is. So to me, the most important part really is what we're starting to hear now, which is what you truly want to see in that area of the city. And there's a challenge there with not knowing when Front Runner is going to be here, which is why it's not been developed and why PRI and SLR are still sitting. Now, their strategy could have changed a lot, but I actually was on a tour with them, including some of their top people who stood in our CRC, looked out over their land and was like, this isn't moving till Front Runner's here. Again, they could make an application tomorrow under Village Center. So this is me kind of thinking through the process. The important part is really what direction the council wants to go. If you adopt it tonight, then we know as a majority of the council what your concepts are for that area. And I think that's really what you have to weigh. If this is what you want to see for the community, regardless of Front Runner, then vote for it. If not, then you have plenty of opportunities over the next year to debate it as you establish zoning.
So Josh, can you summarize for me the Planning Commission's reasoning on their acceptance of this?
They thought there was a Front Runner coming.
did they? I mean,
Yeah, I thought there was until just
I was there.
Well, there's
The front runner is coming. It's just that they're planning to use federal dollars for the project. And I mean, you can correct me, maybe you don't know more details, but currently the federal administration is not releasing any funds for transit. They're just holding them. And so that a lot of the planning was kind of built around using some of those dollars.
Well, the horizon has been like 10 years.
Every year, updates.
In the good projection.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, forever.
So
the 2002 Village Center was created for
that
front runner to be here. That's 2002, and the answer has been every day from 2002 till today. When I have questioned UTA, we don't know. I will not give you a date. Period.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. Is you're creating a specific area for a transit center, and you're not getting one for a very long time, in my opinion. And we know just from the comments that it's not going to happen. Now, if you want to protect this area for the potential of doing some of this, that can be done. My hang up is if there is no transit, you're going to have people with cars. I wish I could change society, but you can't change society. They're going to want cars. They're going to want 2 and 3 cars, and they need that. That's why we have these stall. That's my challenge here, is that you've said we're going to have 1. You're going to have a parking problem down there, and I don't want a parking problem. If I knew there was a transit station going in there, that'd be a whole different ballgame, but it's not. And you are looking at just a piece of property that has potential just like any other one. And so that's why I'm so hung up on parking, is that you're just going to create a parking nightmare if this actually gets developed. But I think through the general plan, I think through specific zoning, you can set up some things to help protect that area. But again, my hang up is if it actually develops tomorrow, you approve this plan and you start to move ahead with it, you're going to have a parking nightmare down there that I just don't particularly care to be a part of.
But the plan doesn't lock us in on any parking number, right?
Yeah, it does.
It recommends reduction of mandates.
It's in the document. You are approving the plan with that document, with the parking stall, correct?
This has no regulatory impact.
No, but it gives the specific guideline that this is what parking is, just like it is for zoning and just like it is for
Correct.
types.
It makes a policy recommendation.
That's exactly right.
Which is non-binding.
Well, of course, but it's giving direction from the
Correct.
city and the city council that this is what we want.
Correct.
Where's the one stall that you're referring to? Wait, is it all there? I'm just trying to look
There's
for
a sheet in there that shows the 1 stall and 1.5 stalls and 2 stalls, and you can kind of see. I'm not exactly sure.
I think what this plan is not a transit dependent plan. I think it's a transit supportive plan, and I do think it will work certainly a lot better if transit comes in and before anything develops. But I don't think it's transit dependent. And I definitely think that if things develop, we really can work those details out as we go along. We're not adopting the apocalypse here, the traffic apocalypse. We're adopting some smart, forward-thinking, proactive plans that do contemplate and look forward to transit and will work best with transit. But we're not locked in. This isn't baked in stone.
Then why do it if you're not actually making a statement of what you want?
Well,
why are you doing
why
it?
adopt any plans? We amend all of our plans as we go along, and we reference them to see, like, okay, what's our vision?
My point
what
is
has
you
been
reference
done?
them based upon what you want in the parking. I'm just simply saying this is not a transit subdivision. This is a regular subdivision, and you have to look at it that way, in my opinion, because it is not going to have front runner there for a very long time, if
Right.
ever.
And
Based on the federal deficit, it may not happen for a very, very long time.
And we could very easily add verbiage to the plan that clarifies the council's sensitivity to parking policy depending on whether transit comes in or not. I think that individual concern can be dealt with. It can even just be struck out of the plan. I think the plan does a lot more than that. And so if that was a concern, I would have no hesitation about just making changes to that if that was a hang up to moving forward.
Well, that may be a good idea because we may be in a situation in the future where it may work to where that's the best thing to do, but we just don't know right now.
How far along can this plan go without the transit coming through? I mean, like, if we approve this plan and we move forward with development, can we get the funds to do the bridge to connect? Because I think having some kind of connectivity on that part of the city to me is a big deal, because it's hard when you're down there. You're locked in. You're going down to Dry Creek or you're going on 4 South, and that's it.
The city's capacity to fund an overpass at 900 South, we don't have the capacity to do that. It would represent...
That's only contingent on if...
Correct. It would be years of capital dollars just to do that one thing. Yeah. Other interventions, like could we get a set of stairs up to the walkway on the 400 South Bridge and then a set of stairs down on the other side? That may be feasible in cooperation with other agencies and federal programs and state programs to address
You're
connectivity.
saying a set of stairs like for foot traffic?
Yeah.
Oh.
If there was development there and people wanted to get across instead of having to backtrack all the way to 12th West and go over the bridge and backtrack again, that's a level of investment that may be doable in partnership.
But not for vehicles.
No, there's no way we could build a bridge.
Which I wasn't suggesting that we do that. I was just saying all of that funding is contingent upon...
That would only happen, in my estimation, as part of the Frontrunner project.
Yeah, as an overpass. I mean, but if Frontrunner truly wasn't coming, I think we'd be back at the table on a 9th South at Great Crossing, which is
Correct.
where we were originally and is still part of this plan.
9th or 7th. Or
And the railroad has specifically said no.
Right, and there's safety issues, but
Yeah.
that'd all be back on the table.
To me, connecting all of that is a big deal.
Because UTA has agreed, when Frontrunner comes, they agreed to put in an overpass.
To get us to back off of the demand for an at Great Crossing currently. That we were trying to put that in immediately so it would be established in there.
For safety and whatnot.
Does that give us time to try to establish that and do that?
Yeah, we could bring that back to
I'll-
the table and.
I'll let Jake.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun, doesn't it, Mayor? Oh man, I'm not going to sleep tonight just thinking about that.
UP's not the most exciting person to talk to.
Maybe I'd like to go to one of those meetings.
I'll let you.
If I could clarify something that Jake just said, you just briefly said, I'd like to see the connectivity down there. So does that mean because we're not going to get the connectivity if we don't do this, you want to do this to get the connectivity?
No, UTA has to come through.
No, I get that. I'm just trying to clarify Jake's
That's what I was just not understanding. I didn't know if there was some other way that we were trying to get funding to be able to do some connectivity there, but it is fully dependent on UTA coming through.
Right.
But I would also argue, I mean, we've got a similar plan on 550 North. I mean, we're talking about working with MAG on how we're going to get across I-15. There are going to be future connectivity issues the city has to deal with and try and figure out where the dollars are coming from. South of Bucky's getting over the June Sucker property, that's going to become potentially a regional issue. UTA identified this as a regional issue in essence by willing to fund it. With that said, I mean, if you don't have the necessary connectivity, that's also a significant thing you got to talk to about density, right? If we don't have the necessary crossings to address that, then I don't know that 20, 30, 40, 50 units an acre are appropriate when we can't get people in and out of there because there's no train and there's no road connectivity as well. So those are all issues to wrestle through, and they'd come through in the current planning part of this discussion as well.
So I asked about what the planning commission's reasoning was. Jake said it's because they thought the train was coming, knowing that the train's not going to come for X number of years. Would their reasoning change?
That is a really hard thing to guess at.
Let's send it back to them.
I didn't feel like the planning commission was acting like they're saying, oh, front runner's coming, thus we must act. I felt like they were communicating similar to what Logan communicated, that in anticipation of the future and what may happen, and because this plan generally contains, independent of transit, good planning principles for making a good city that will be a good place for a long time, that this is a good plan.
Other than the parking.
We didn't have any specific discussions about that in Planning Commission.
Can we do this plan with more parking?
Well, again, we can change the policy statements in this plan regarding parking, but the parking actual regulation will happen at the zoning level. So if you want to make sure that when somebody goes to do zoning later and they look at the plan for reference and policy direction and they see, hey, we want lots of parking stalls down here, yeah, we could make that change in this plan.
Are you looking at an overlay for this? Because an overlay would have its own set of regulations for.
Well, any zone can have its own set of regulations.
Right, but you have the same zone R10 over here as you do somewhere else, but if you're wanting a different parking standard here than you did somewhere else, then you'd be looking at more like an overlay, wouldn't you?
It could be done that way, or we could just say in the general parking area, if you're within this area, like a couple of years ago, we said if you're on Main Street in downtown and you change your use, you don't have to add more parking. And so then we got the gelato shop on the corner of my neighborhood.
Or you can just delete the whole parking provision in there and then let it be addressed when you do.
Right. You can give no policy guidance in the plan regarding parking.
But this is, I mean, kind of where we're getting to is, I think, why we started with the conversation about what do we do with this? Because there's been some unknowns that have arisen that have resulted in a whole bunch of discussion and questions about the plan without guidance from the Planning Commission with those facts. And I think that's why we kind of led without many of you knowing kind of where all that was heading as to, well, what's the right approach? Do we continue or potentially even table this? Do we move forward with it right now? Or since there's nothing driving, hey, we need to have a zone in place in a month, does it make sense to allow some clarity to come to where all this is and then have these debates? That's kind of why we led with it. Again, if everybody wants to just move this into the past now, then pass it and move it in. But if we want some resolution to it, we're going to need some time, but we have it, which is unusual, actually.
Okay, I'm going to start with Jake. What do you want to do?
I don't want to see this wasted. I think it's awesome that we got funding for consultants to help us with that and everything. I do think that in the general plan, we could put some guidelines in there to help protect this area, but I don't see the purpose of approving this right now.
Karen?
I still have the remaining concern about the island of residential on the west side of the tracks there. So I think some revision to the plan would be good.
Do you want him to bring this back, or do you want to shelf it with that concern, or do you want to work through this, or tell me what you want to do?
Work through it.
Okay, Logan?
I've been looking forward to approving this. I am quite happy with where it's landed, so I'd be happy to move forward, adopt it.
Mike?
I like the plan, but I agree with your parking concerns. If the plan can be functional with additional parking, then I'm fine with it. Like Jake, I don't want to waste this plan. I think it's a good step toward what we need, but I'd be concerned about parking in the short term, and it certainly isn't going to hurt anything in the long term if the train does come.
Okay, then what I'll do is this, I'll open it up for a motion for approval and look for a second and then a vote, and if there is not, and then we'll seek some direction. So I'm open for a motion.
Well, I will make a motion. It may be a futile one tonight, but I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 23-2026, approving the station area plan.
Okay, I have a motion. I need a second. Okay, motion dies for lack of a second.
Oh, and I thought you were going to get to vote tonight.
So it sounds to me like that they like to have some more discussion on this. So I think that let's set this up for a work session, if that would be okay with you. And then we'll have a little discussion about some of the concerns that we have.
Yeah, and then we can make adjustments to it and bring it back.
And I won't be
if
here on
it's
the
in-
18th. I don't
Well, we
think-
won't be doing it on the 18th, so.
Oh, we got that, yeah.
Yeah,
So maybe in 30 days, Josh, if that would be okay? Does that sound all right?
Yeah. we'll
Okay,
get it done.
sounds good. We're gonna go to our third item. Troy? It's good I'm not driving to Bear
I'll
Lake.
take less than an hour. How about that commitment? We do need to, you have heard about this just last week. We'll move through this quickly, but Provo has requested some changes. So given the hour, again, we have a project on the north end of town. We've talked through that, and what you saw last week was an agreement that would, on average, potentially about $15,000 would go to Provo for the next 15 years. Provo's got more going on politically perhaps than we do, and certainly more departments. They're bouncing this agreement between multiple departments with comments on it. Their economic development person that's moving this forward actually is now under direction to both present at work session and get a motion from the council on the same day, which actually violates kind of their standard policy. The council has asked for it to happen faster. He doesn't have a great read on necessarily where it's going. The changes are relatively minor. They've asked for a couple of things. One, that revenue sharing not commence until 90% of the development is complete. That's in a written draft I have here. That would delay the implementation of dollars going back and forth, but the end date has not extended. So the net effect of that is, if we're on the paying end of this, would decrease the amount of payments we would make. Now, I guess I'm going to hide that again real quick and say then one of the internal concerns he's receiving is they're concerned that the commercial might be built and then the residential would never materialize. And I said, well, you could eliminate that by taking out the new clause you've just put in here, because if the commercial is built, we would be sending you a lot of money because there's no tax revenue on the Provo side. So they're wrestling with this still. Both cities, they're asking would add estimated costs for fire and ambulance service using the Provo business license costs, which the current estimate of both of our anticipated costs for police and fire would increase the differential by about $2,500 per year to the benefit of Provo. Now, with that said, they asked for another change that I don't have yet that would escalate that by inflation over time. Again, that could flow to our benefit or theirs. So the revised estimate with these changes really doesn't move the needle much at all. The high and the low estimate still is kind of break even to $30,000 to Provo. You'll note that the high end of Provo is still higher than our low end, so there's still a significant chance that they would end up sending us money as well, depending on tax rates and intensity and everything else. But assuming now with the changes, 12 years at the mid-range of those, we would anticipate as much as $200,000 going to Provo for this deal in return for cooperation to develop something that would be truly extraordinary for both communities, in my opinion. That's the presentation, subject to your questions. I do have a recommended motion that's different than what's in your packet, giving really authority for the mayor to sign the agreement after minor revisions to the contract adjusting terms that do not adjust the estimated total amounts by more than 10%. I was looking for some language that would let us insert some of this stuff that they're wrestling with without having to come back in a month to do that. And all of this language in here, you know, is moving the needle a very small percentage amount overall. So, I mean, I have copies of that if anybody's inclined to, plus I'll answer any questions you might have. There's just 2 copies of.
Okay, questions for Troy? I personally think this is de minimis.
Yeah.
Yes, and we've
Agreed.
conveyed that over and over again. I hope Provo sees it the same way, but if not, again, it's given the tax benefit
to the cities and the community. It absolutely is. I mean, yeah.
So what's the council, what kind of direction? You want us just to go ahead with it, or do you want it brought back, or what's your pleasure?
I'm ready to make a motion, so
Okay.
you go ahead.
All right,
I'll motion to approve resolution number 2026-25, approving an interlocal cooperation agreement with Provo City on development.
okay, I have a motion, need a second.
Do we need to, we need to do this amended emo.
You better do it then. You got it.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2026-20-25, approving an interlocal cooperation agreement with Provo City and granting authority to the mayor to sign the agreement after minor revisions to the contract, adjusting terms that do not adjust the estimated total amounts paid by more than 10%.
Second.
Those in favor say, roll call vote, sorry. Jake?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Last but not least, Brad. You're making your money tonight.
This is like old days.
It is.
This is like,
We get overtime.
Computer's turned off at 10.
wait a second, where'd my bar at? There it is.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It should still be there.
There it is. Yeah. Okay. So about 4:30 this afternoon, Jeff said, I have a conflict. Can you do my presentation? So please bear with me. I'm going to do my best.
Didn't we have a work session on this?
We did.
We did. And so if you would like, I can go through this very quickly.
Was there any major changes since that?
There are no changes since that.
We just tabled it because of, I forget the reason.
We
did the work session.
Oh,
We did a work session, and we actually had it on the calendar to be adopted by the council right after that work session, but we had a noticing issue.
That's right.
Yeah, we
That's
did.
right.
We needed to go back to the planning commission because it's dealing with Title 11.
Right. So,
Make a motion? I'm ready to make a motion.
awesome.
I motion to approve. This is the right one to read?
I think so.
Okay. I make a motion to approve ordinance number 22-2026, amending Title 11, Chapter 6 of the Springville City Code Flood Damage Prevention Ordinance to meet the minimum requirements of the National Flood Insurance Program regulations in 44 CFR Part 60, 3D, and to formally adopt the new Flood Insurance Study, FIS report, and Flood Insurance Rate Maps, FIRMS, for Utah County and incorporated areas effective June 23rd, 2026, as presented.
Have a motion and a second.
I'll second.
Let's roll call vote. Logan?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Jake?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Need a motion for adjournment.
I'll second.
I have 2 seconds and 2 motions. Thank you. Wow, there's a record for, but this is like old times in the 90s.